I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like live right here at Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be back as playing host. Have a big show, a couple of technical difficulties that I'll come back to later because I don't want to waste too much time with that. And our first guest is already here, and I'm very happy that she is. So there are a number of things that we're going to get to in just a minute. And after our discussion with our upcoming illustrious guest, we will get into a number of things. Of course, the big thing will be a breakdown of a recent discussion and interview that Dr. Claud Anderson had on the Comedy Central platform, the Charlemagne the God show. So we're gonna get into that because there are a lot of overlapping, reverberating myths and issues that are raised in that interview, and we'll see if we can work around some of the tech issues that I'm having. We also have to get into a very important statement that I think I was asked. I know I'm encouraged and given permission to read a statement from Dhoruba Bin-Wahad regarding what we talked about recently in terms of Fred Hampton Jr., and those using the name and the brand of Fred Hampton. Dhoruba has a statement that will speak for itself, and so we're going to get to that as well. And then after that, there are a couple other smaller not smaller stories, but others well, one of them is definitely smaller, kind of just my own thing. Because on a recent Drink Champs, Ghostface Killer said something that has validated something I have felt for decades. So we're going to get to that as well. A little bit on AFRICOM and some other things, a little bit on Malcolm X, a little bit on Jimmy Dore, a little bit on Rittenhouse. So there's a number of things we're going to get to this morning. But first up, extending from our conversation the other day regarding a recent, a new and expanding project on an oral history of DC hip hop. I said I would reach out to her. Of course, she's involved. She would have to be. And she has graciously said she would come on and talk with us. Of course, I'm talking about the Toni Blackman, who, among many other things, is an award-winning artist whose steadfast work and commitment to hip-hop led the U.S. State Department to select her as an American cultural specialist and one of the first hip-hop envoys. She recently served in Benin this past June. Her past tours have included Senegal, Ghana, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Southern Africa, Southeast Asia, and Brazil. She has traveled to 47 countries performing, speaking, and teaching. Her bio is much more extensive. The link to it and her website is already in the description to this program. And as I'm going to ask her about in just a moment, as we bring her up and greet her this morning, good morning to you, Sister Toni. Sorry if I caught you mid last check.
I was like, let me check.
I was trying to get the timing right, but I just also wanted to greet you by saying you were also, for me personally, one of the earliest, most gracious and for me, bigger names to contribute to my own research on mixtapes. And I ran into you at an event years ago in New York, and you were speaking. I think Kevin Powell was speaking. I think Rosa Clemente was speaking.
Yeah.
And I just, ran up on you with a little microphone and said, "I got a question about mixtapes." And you gave me a very important interview. So anyway, good morning, greetings, welcome to the program. It's good to see you again.
Thank you for having me on this Monday.
Oh, it's yeah. Excuse me, I got my bad. My situation is not good over here. Anyway, so there's a lot I want to talk about that I would like to raise with you while you're here. Some of which is already outlined in your biography. I mean, but I did just want to get it. First of all, where are you artistically right now? Because you are an artist, you do produce. I mean, you're a dope MC. I mean, so like, where are you with that right now?
Well, artistically, being stuck indoors actually was had its benefits. In that it forced me to be still. And as an overworker, overgiver, overdoer, overcommitter, I was neglecting. I totally wanted to save the world, save hip hop, save Black people, and I kept forgetting about me. And so I dug deep when the depression hit. I just started creating because that's what art does. That's what music does. That's what poetry does. And I realized that my art hadn't gone anywhere. So I just started making music. I learned how to record myself. I got in touch with mentors, producers, musicians were reaching out with tracks. And I just took a deeper dive into the hip hop meditation stuff I've been working on since 2013. And I took a deeper dive into sharing content online. And then also shot a few videos during the pandemic. There's a videographer, filmmaker named Stealth Star here in New York. And then I made a commitment that I was going to honor the trip to Senegal in 2021, regardless of what was going down, as long as doors were open. And because of that trip to Senegal, I ended up doing some intense spiritual work, recovering a lot, the post-slavery trauma, childhood wounds, self-worth issues. I spent 9 weeks, and during that time, I shot 3 more music videos. And so it's music, meditation, music, mindfulness, it's healing, spoken word, it's rap that is about increasing your self-awareness and about completing yourself. And that's what I'm doing. It's called Hip Hop Meditation. Of course, now DJ Paul Howard sent me 6 tracks, one of which I used in my current hip hop theater piece, Let the Cipher Say Amen. I did a work in progress in April with Poetic Theater Productions at Theater Me Too in Brooklyn. We won't be doing that again until 2023, because in 2022, my book, Wisdom of the Cipher, will be coming out with Red Sky. So I'm really excited because this book is the book I wrote in 2009, and then my apartment got robbed and I didn't have everything backed up. So I lost everything. A few years
Man.
sadness about that, because it was a book.
Somebody took the book. Somebody took the manuscript.
They took everything, my grandma's jewelry, 2 cameras, and it really set me back emotionally.
Yeah,
so
I can imagine.
Had to get myself together, and then I got a deal. Then that deal, the co-owner of the publishing company died, and his children were fighting over the estate. And so my lawyer was the co-owner. Was like, look, we can't do it right now. And then life just sent me on a trail of 2016. I went through an extreme severe burnout and went, of course, to Africa. And while there, 70% of my symptoms went away. I was fasting, cleansing, doing my herbs, and making my juices and eating papaya and melon every day. And I've just been on this track. Like a lot of Black women had fibroid surgery. when I came back. And but just like each thing that happened elevated me, elevated me to the point now where I'm so excited to see what's going to happen next. To see a healed Toni Blackman, a well Toni Blackman, in this world doing what it is she was put here to do. I'm just grateful for the ancestors, because you never would have told me that at this stage of life I would have as many creative opportunities as I do right now. You
Right
know?
on.
Yeah.
Wow. So just a little bit. Just a little bit has been going on.
Oh, it's been a little bit. I
And
didn't
I'm
even
glad.
Kwame Alexander, the DC, Virginia, Maryland, the DMV's Children's Author Award-winning author. I've done a few projects with him as well. I was in his
Oh,
children's
wow.
freestyling the word of the day. Sort of like an
Really?
electric. Yeah, Kwame is so brilliant. Some of the work that he is like doing to promote literacy, and yeah, so I've been doing stuff like that quietly over there.
I think we have to talk some more and see if we could get a Toni Blackman freestyle word of the day on the Remix Morning Show and on here on BPM. I think that'd be a great regular. Not. I know we supposed to come. Well, I suppose I supposedly come from the era of no biting, but that sounds like a worthy borrow of an idea. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of which, so if we take this, what sounds like a very optimistic and positive use of some not entirely positive personal and global occurrences, events, there is this history that is recounted to a certain extent in this documentary that I would like to talk a little bit more about. You are obviously a key, a component of all of this. So I'm tempted, and you should correct me, but I'm tempted just to start where I ask you to talk about the history of Freestyle Union. But I don't know if there's a context or a preceding history that should be brought into that. That I don't know, but when we're talking about DC hip hop and that whole moment that is captured, at least in part, in this series.
Well,
anyway.
I think it's an important series, and I'm really proud of the guys for initiating and doing this work, because if we don't tell our story, who will tell our story? And I know for me, the beginnings, like I've been a hip hop organizer since I got introduced to hip hop in middle school. You understand? And in undergrad at Howard, I tried to start the United Rappers Organization, but I was a little girl from California, and that was pre-regional connections. So they were the East Coast, whatever, like whatever, So that didn't fly. But then a few years later, I started the Hip Hop Arts Movement, which was a hip hop theater ensemble, had a bunch of dope people in it, DC based, some DC folks, Howard folks, and so it was one of the first hip hop theater ensembles. But I was at the time, Ethelbert Miller was like, "You doing too much, baby girl. You doing too much. You need to wash your bowl. Find a focus. And so he was.
And forgive this interruption. I'm sorry to interrupt, but just since you dropped the name, I just have to say I think Howard did him dirty, and we could just leave it there.
Yes.
I'm just going to leave it there.
Howard did him dirty. One of my life goals is to well, we talk about that off, but yes.
Okay, but I just sorry to interrupt. I just had to.
No, my alma mater was disrespectful in every sense of the word, disrespectful. But so Ethelbert Miller, who is a gift, and anyone who has crossed his path in this lifetime has been blessed. He sat with me in many a days. And then he was like, okay, we went through all the things I was doing. He was like, okay, we're going to choose one of these things. You're going to wash your bowl and you're going to focus on mastery. So I chose performing, right? Overwriting, overacting, over whatever, all the things I was up to. And so the goal was to take every performance you could get and to create opportunities to develop as a performer. And because of Ethelbert, I had been introduced to the writing groups of the Black Arts Movement. You know how they have those groups, those writing collectives, and they would get together and workshop stuff. So between he and Hakeem Adabudi, I had studied. And so I wanted to apply that to rap because I wanted to become a better freestyler. Now, of course, my elders didn't support this rap thing, but I was already groomed and shaped. There was a lot of anti-elders in the theater community. I'm not going to call names. In the poetry community, theater community, and the dance, all of my Black elders were like side-eyeing me. And I wasn't uplifted and affirmed during a certain era because they thought I was crazy and out of my mind. And then I thought they were crazy because I'm like, did y'all forget who y'all was? You know what I mean? You're not that old, right? But so I just kind of swam, and the elders who showed up to support showed up, and Freestyle Union came out of it because I wanted to be a better freestyler. I wanted to be a better rapper, and what better way, as I learned from Bert, surround yourself with people who are better than you and pull them all together. And so we was already hanging at the State of the Union on U Street in DC. And everybody was coming there. And Dave Kasdan, if you remember Kaz, helped coordinate space. But rap MCs don't drink when they are working on the craft. They might get a little, but they don't drink. So the bar was like crickets. And so Story, the owner, was like, look, I like you. I love you. I love everything you do. But this right here, we're not making any money.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So Kenny Carroll, I told Kenny. So Kenny Carroll and Brian Gilmore were like my big brothers. A lot, which was really, really important for me as a girl whose father was in and out. And so I would draw certain male figures in my life who have no idea how important they were on my journey. I'm getting almost emotional. But Kenny found us a place. He was like, look, now it's in Southeast. And I was like, no problem, no problem. So of course my friends were like, ain't nobody going to no hip hop event in Southeast. You crazy. What are you doing? Nobody's coming over there. And so I was talking with Sub-Z about it, Terrence Nicholson, and Terrence was like, well, Shorty, just try it. So I did. And it works. And it worked beyond what I ever imagined to work. And I knew I was on purpose. And I knew I had answered the call. And that's when some elders who did lift up what I was up to started to show up sometimes just out of the blue. And Willie Ascari would come through just to give advice unsolicited. But some of it actually changed the trajectory of my life in terms of it was he who insisted there needed to be ground rules. Needs to be ground rules. The mind needs to be trained, he said. And those little girls over there who came here to see those little boys actually are studying you. So what you do and don't do impacts the future of those little girls. And that's when it started to hit home, and we started to pay attention to vibration and energy. And that's how Freestyle Union was born. There was 7 people. And we were all there with Sub-Z, Kokai. There was a guy, Monty Taff from the Universal Zulu Nation. There's another cat from the Zulu Nation who I can't remember, DC. Because I was a part of the Zulu Queens in DC. I actually led Zulu Queens in DC for a year. And so my hip hop roots, I didn't realize it until I was doing a documentary interview how like my whole life it's just hip hop. And it explains why I was such a purist and tried to be a savior for the culture as well.
Just for a second, when you talk about the ground rules that were set, what were they and why? Well, you've already said why, but what were those? What do you mean by the ground rules?
The idea of adding structure to maintain the vibration and the energy, because there were all ages there. So you had with youngest maybe was 13 or 14, right? But then there might be somebody who was 40, and then there was a female presence there as well. And so the first rule was disrespect of women. I don't know if I can say the word, but the bees.
Yeah, there's no language restrictions here. Whatever you want to say is fine.
Well, so then because there was a lot of bitches. That's when bitches started really coming in to play in terms of rap lyrics. But the thing is that the bitch word it's easy to rhyme to. And I science the fact that it's not always just about disrespecting women. It's just pure laziness and ignorance. You don't have a vocabulary. And because you don't have a vocabulary, you can't rhyme. So with those limitations, you can say something you think is cool, like bitch or clit, and it's easy. It fits in your mouth. The word fits in your mouth nice, you know? And so those
spit and itch. How dope am I?
those are aesthetic things that I learned from being in Vera Katz's class in fine arts and Dr. Congo and Ethelbert Miller, all these folks, and Dr. Stephen Henderson, who wrote Understanding Black Poetry, work documented with Larry Neal, the Black Arts Movement. I took 2 of his classes before he retired, and I would go talk to him. And he would like push me to push the culture, to study the culture. And so I was straight up, I was a hip hop nerd before, way before. And then I started to find my tribe. And a lot of that tribe came to Freestyle Union, right? And because we were in DC during that era, there wasn't a whole lot of options for hip hop activity. So when something happened, everybody came. DC, Maryland, Virginia, and after about a month, some youngins came from Duke Ellington, right? I started meeting folks in like Raindrop Line. There was events happening at Blackburn Center, Renee Toussaint.
I think you broke up there just a little bit. I just want to make sure that people heard that you referenced Duke Ellington, which is a very important.
Duke Ellington High School, right?
Right. Not that the man himself wasn't important, but you're talking about the high school, right? Sorry.
So I met some of them at events at Howard and invited. So I was just inviting people, trying to get, some more folks. But they then brought a crew. It was a crew of high school students, and they came in with their rhyme books in their backpacks, like straight up backpackers. Hip hop, nerds, whatever. And they were just so hungry to learn and to grow. So then I was like, because we were only gonna do the workshop for a few months, and then we just decided to keep going. And then more people came, and then some kids from University of Maryland came. And then I met this sister, Tamara Francois, who worked in the music industry, has her own agency now, and she was a student there. And she was like, hey, I want to work with you on this. And so she drew people in. Then the Howard students started to come, the MCs, many of them from the DC, Maryland area. So Southeast was it easy, like, yeah, I'm going to go to the Cypher. And then there was some skateboarding kids with the purple hair. Some white kids from Virginia, they came in on the Metro down. And it just started to grow. And then Black Indian, who was at Duke Ellington at the time, had his crew, his street crew from DC. So some cats they used to call it 21st in Vietnam, was what the neighborhood, the area was called. And there was a couple others. And so it was this hodgepodge of different communities that would never, ever, ever interact if it wasn't for hip hop. And so that made my hip hop heart so happy, because this was just such a beautiful display of the culture. And I remember going through the period with your girl, what was her name? May she rest in peace. With the steamroller in the streets over Tupac Records.
Oh, you talking about C. Dolores Tucker?
Yes, C. Dolores Tucker. Her and the pastor. So that was happening. So I was doing town hall meetings, speaking on panels. Wow. And then I'm like, yo, but Freestyle Union is right over here. come to the cipher, come to the cipher. And I knew they were not about true change. They were about control, because they never came. And
so just and maybe we can, because I know we don't have all that much time this morning, so maybe we can. I'm happy to have you come back, and we could do this as even starting Friday, but but there is my own broad disagreement with how history has remembered Tucker's argument.
Yes.
So I think that she was flawed in many ways, and to the point you just raised, if not being willing to check out, at least in this case, the reality. Her argument around corporate takeover of hip hop has been, I think, vindicated. Her argument there, I think, should have had more purchase at the time, pun intended. And has been recast in some cases by some ignoble actors for their own purposes today. But I do, but in the point that you're raising in this instance, she should have gone. She should have gone and checked out what you all were doing.
Freestyle Union. What's beautiful about this documentary, and that it begins the oral histories, and I'm hoping it will inspire oral histories in other cities, because there's so many cities that where I visited and befriended people. Remember when we had chat rooms like pre all the other internet, and you would meet people in these chat rooms who were trying to do
bulletin boards.
I would get emails and phone calls from people saying, how do I do this? How do I do this? I got letters from prison, from jails. Like I got folks reaching out to me all over the world, not understanding that it was grassroots, it was underground, and it was in DC, but it was in Southeast, so Martin Luther King and Good Hope Road. So the folklore around Freestyle Union sometimes missed out the reality of the urban struggle. And being an artist, pioneer, and innovator, meaning you gonna grind for some years before the arts supports you, before for sponsors support you. The only sponsors that wanted to come were the mainstream, who essentially wanted to take over. You know what I mean? So as things started to grow, that is what started to happen. And I didn't know how to manage or deal with that, and no one else around me did either. Because it was at the time, and this is where my points have been vindicated, because I got attacked on a lot of panels. I was accused of trying to feminize hip hop, and to feminize hip hop because the ground rules, the bitch whole thing is not a discussion. We don't debate whether or not you can call disrespect women. If that's what you do, cool. Just do it. Just don't do it here in the cipher. And then that next week after that rule, I had a no battling rule. Not because I'm against battling, because battling does not belong in the cipher. You understand? Because you come to the cipher to build your skills. It is a dojo. It is a workout room. It is a place to go put yourself through your own boot camp. Your focus is yourself. So if I'm focused on you to win a battle, who am I missing? Me. That means I lack growth. I lack development in terms of my confidence, right? So me solely, without having to beat someone else, I can't be dope, right? I lack the development of my vocabulary, right? These are important things, and how to tell a story, right? So the story is bigger than dominating on someone else. It's so much bigger. And then the liberation comes to you being able to synergize all of these elements so that you can rock most any crowd. Like my philosophy was, we should be able to rock a room full of 8-year-olds, a senior citizen home with people over 82, a room full of immigrants who barely speak English. Why? Because hip hop is universal. You don't even have to understand the words to feel people. And I know that because I've traveled 48 countries. Someone is spitting in Wolof, I can feel it, and they can feel me even if they don't understand English. If my soul is present and I am connected to the core of the rhyme. And that's the documentary reminded us that what was beautiful is that we got together every Monday night. We'd rap anywhere from 2 to 3 hours and we would freestyle. When you improvise, it becomes a meditation. When you improvise, you have to connect to something greater than yourself. You can call it source, you can call it God, you can call it power, you can call it ancestors. But at some point, you become a channel. You become a channel and things start to happen within you. And what's so unfortunate today about the ciphers that have become popularized is that they are not ciphers. They are performances, they are showcases, and they are open mics. That's what's missing in the culture. It's one of the key ingredients that are missing because cats don't know how to get open. They only know how to perform. They don't know how to access their core. They don't have the confidence and they don't have the skill. And I know this because I teach workshops all over the world. And there are some places where it's like Jared Shield, a professor at a Berkeley College of Music. He sat in on my workshop in at High Arts hip hop theater place in Harlem. And he said, "You're teaching the science of vibe." Jared is a musician and a music educator. But Dr. Shield, and he started breaking some stuff down. And that's the beauty of what I do. And why I say I'm not a genius, because I do stuff intuitively, and then smart people come tell me what I'm doing. But he said,
all right, fair enough.
Science of vibe. But in Freestyle Union, we taught ourselves. And that's why
I saw, I've seen and sat in on a couple of your online workshops over the years, and have seen a little bit of, I think, what you're talking about, which is great. And I remember at one point in a class, I was we tried to have students in a hip hop studies course wanted to. I forgot how we got there, but there was some discussion. There was like a challenge of, cats saying they could rhyme. So I was like, okay. So I did a little bit, not organized or in a conscious way that you obviously have done, but I saw what you were talking about. I remember vividly, because I remember at first we started the cipher and it went immediately into hostility, combativeness, anti-woman, and I mean, it was just all. So I said, okay, hold on. I tried to initiate some ground rules. So I said, let's try around, because I felt like in a classroom, I felt a little bit like, this was a little bit inappropriate, but I was like, let's try a round or two where there's no curse words. There's no hostility expressed towards anyone. I think there might've been another one, but and it fell off. I mean, everybody was struggling. It was like a whole breakdown of the whole thing. And it was wild. I was like, wow, that's deep. So anyway.
The programming is deep. The programming is deep. And I feel like I'm finally evolved and mature enough to be able to have these conversations without getting upset or frustrated. Because at the end of the day, like I did with one group of teens, we printed out the lyrics to their favorites. Put it on the screen. And when I asked some of them to read it, just read it like poetry, they were uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. Because it's nasty and it's whack. Take the beat away. It's nasty and it's whack. So what I love about in recent years, there's so much dopeness now. The problem is that the dopeness, there's dope there's dope teenagers, there's dope 20-somethings, there's dope 30-somethings, dope 40, but it doesn't get the spotlight. So there's a lot of great music coming out right now. I mean, some really great stuff, but it doesn't get the spotlight. But that cipher concept, it's sad because it's our culture. It is at the core of what it means to be a person of African descent, is the ability to connect through creativity, through creative expression, to have your spirit moved, to have your spine tingle, to something, I was being interviewed by Michael Viega, a music therapist scholar, and he asked me, he says, "You seem obsessed with energy. When did this begin? The way you talk about energy." It was the first time anyone asked me that. And I wasn't even aware of this until like 4 years ago, during that interview. And I realized it was going to church with my grandma when I was 6 years old. And she would sometimes make me go to devotion because grandpa needed to take a nap, and everybody else was not there. So I would go to devotion. And I remember the old folks, it was church before church. And there was these stained glass windows. The church smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. And the old folks would moan. The organ or the piano would be playing. Ah, Lord, oh, Lord, yeah. So you could barely understand the words. And some of them would start to cry. Somebody would catch the Holy Ghost and shout. And you could feel it in your whole body. What they were doing was releasing the pain of what it meant to be born in the skin in this country, to work. They were laborers. It was a working class neighborhood where people worked at the steel mill, the glass factory, Dow Chemical. My grandmother cooked in the kitchen at the hospital when she had a job. And so all this was happening. And I wasn't aware. That stuck with me. So when I started Freestyle Union, I subconsciously was trying to replicate that feeling that I got in devotion with my grandma. And I wasn't self-aware until 4 years ago. But that's what's missing. These cats don't know how to access the energy that will free them from the stress of the week, just once a week. But that's what we did in Freestyle Union. That's what we did in Freestyle Union. We freed ourselves once a week.
Listen, let me ask you just one more question this morning, and then I really do hope that when I reach out and bother you going forward, we can do this some more, because there's so much more that I'd like to talk about. But speaking of energy, I have, years ago, I came with the wrong energy to some folks who had somewhat of a similar experience to you, as I understood it, in terms of the State Department invitation. Mm-hmm. And I, looking back, I have to, be self-critical and recognize that I was coming, like I didn't mean any harm, but I was trying to, I had been studying almost exclusively from the perspective of the state, what their interests are in involving themselves in art and the art of the oppressed and the colonized. And when I approached these cats, I and asked them about it, at the time, I didn't understand their reaction, but now looking back, I was like, well, because I came with the wrong energy, and I was not. So, but I am curious about that. So from, having had that experience and been all over the world, we can read how the State Department and even Hillary Clinton, when she was the head of the State Department, was saying, we're going to use hip hop like we used to use jazz. To make the world think that, this country isn't what it is. And, but from an artist, from those who are invited to do that work, and from those like you who do the work and are on the ground with the people doing that work, from your perspective, what good comes? What do you see? And what does my sort of myopic and, look at from a critic of the state, what am I missing when I, because I'm not invited, I'm not good enough to do all that stuff.
Well, for me, I remember I was going back and forth to South Africa since like late 97, early 98. And then in 2001, I was invited to Senegal. It was supposed to be Senegal, Ghana, and I think Ivory Coast, but then Ivory Coast had some war situations happening, and so it was just Senegal and Ghana. And initially, it was going to be me and 3 Freestyle Union members, and then they got nervous about sending rappers, and so they just had me since I had a master's and I was an educator. And so there was a sister, EJ Montgomery, and her partner Sandra, whose name I can't last name. They both retired. And so they asked me if I was interested. And so I went. Now I knew Senegal. I knew Senegalese culture from Washington, D.C. I knew the food. I knew the people. I knew the music. I had friendships. I had relationships, my ex, everything. So I was ready for Senegal. And one of the things that I got clear about while I was there was the importance of me showing up. Right. Everyone kept asking me, are you going to be nervous? There's going to be Muslim elders there and how they treat women and blah, blah, blah. The Muslim elders came to me, got a translator, and thanked me, and sat down and thanked me for showing up, for remembering them. They prayed over me and told me to keep connecting with Africa, right? That's what happened. And Senegal was the first time I cried in a cipher, because the love that they felt coming from me, they felt acknowledged, they felt seen. The night I was leaving to fly to Ghana, there was 22 people at the airport as I got out of the van. I'm like, what is this? It was a send off. And you know how I know I made an impact? Because the wives and girlfriends came. They don't be happy about the chick who's the chick from out of town being around my man. They showed up. And we freestyled, and I cried underneath the moonlight. I got to Ghana, an elder at a teaching conference showed up 2 hours late. Everything in Ghana is late anyway. It was my thing started 2 hours late, and then just Ghana time. Then the elder came. He had nerve to come even later, and he falls asleep in the front row during my lecture. Then he raises his hand as soon as it's over, wakes up. He was like, "How dare you? I have read your bio. You bring this rubbish here. You are an educated Black woman. You understand? Your ancestors survived the Middle Pack." Like, he tried to read me on. And so he looked like my grandfather. So I wasn't sure I was going to be able to speak, because I was raised to respect my elders, like hardcore. But as he finished, and I said, "Look, Mr. I can't remember his name." I said, "You arrived an hour late, hour and a half late before me. You went to sleep. And then you woke up to ask me questions, which means you came to attack me. And what you missed out on were the answers to your questions." Because he wanted to know about Snoop Doggy and Kim Kim. And then he was so silly. I knew he was doing it on purpose. And he had all these judgments about hip hop. So I had to break down him the significance of hip hop. And that I said, why would you allow mainstream TV to define it for you? Would you allow them to define icon culture and traditions? No. And I went to South Africa. Someone called into the radio and said, "I know who you are. I know your work. You're a freedom fighter. Wouldn't your grandfather be ashamed?" I said, my grandfather who helped to build the country that I'm from, would be ashamed of me representing the country that I'm from, that my family helped build? And so I was able, and so I've been challenged enough on the issue. The State Department is the State Department, and the artists are the artists. Artists move in a certain way. There's a way to be subversive. Everything doesn't need to be spoken or said. There are conversations that are held off mic that are critical conversations that help to strengthen the ties that we have to people around the world. And I know the artists that I know, a lot of them are activists. And so, yeah, there's the powers that be, but there are also relationships that are being built that I think are critically important, because if we don't go, who's going? Folks that don't represent our interests, folks that don't represent the light, and folks that are not trying to fight for our survival. So yeah, but I look at my job the same way you got a cousin that is a policeman, you know? You got an uncle that is
You got a host who teaches at Morgan State University. That's no revolutionary institution.
So that's the way I see it. At this point, I do have some stories, that were quite some questionable experiences where I could have been in danger. But that's another date. I wrote the memoir.
I was going to I was gonna say, like, when is that coming out, and how long is the line for first interview on that story? Like, I know I'm unfortunately can't be in the front, but
There's reality.
listen, Toni Blackman, I
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming through. I really do intend to pester you so that we can do some more in the
Maybe
near
when I get
future, and
back.
anytime, huh?
No, when I get back, I'm headed to Senegal next Monday. So when I'll be there 6 to 7 weeks. So when I get back, yeah.
Have a great trip.
Thank you.
Tell everybody over there we said what's up, and that, like you said, what they see on TV is not real, and we'll catch them in the struggle.
Yes.
With Toni Blackman. Anyway, peace to you. Thank you very much for coming through this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, right on. Take care. All right, everybody, please check the show notes for links to her work and her website. And those who are on those, by the way, who are happening to listen to this now on iTunes or Spotify, you can also go to our Black Power Media YouTube channel and get the show notes and click all the links. Or I think the links might even be in the notes there for you there, right there. So go ahead and click them. Anyway, big shout out to Toni Blackman and DC Hip Hop and the Freestyle Union, all that history and all that, and all the great artists that, as she says, do not get the attention they deserve despite their ubiquitousness. All right, good people. Quick break, and then let's come back and let's talk about Dr. Claud Anderson in this recent interview. Back in quick.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
All right, everybody. As I said, before we wrap up today, we are going to get into a very important, I think, statement from Dhoruba Bin-Wahad. We're going to talk a little bit about the recent news surrounding the assassination of Malcolm X, a little bit on Jimmy Dore and Rittenhouse and Ghostface. Ghostface confirmed. Although, you know what, I can't even. So this is one of the issues today, and we'll have to maybe reconvene on this and come back to all of this. One of the issues I'm having today is that I'm not able to. Long story short, I'm not able to share any audio. So I will go through, what I have to say. We have the links in the show notes to the video that I'm talking about in terms of Claud Anderson and later Ghostface. And then maybe when we come back on another episode, we can get back to having full capabilities here. But I don't want to get into that and belabor all that and get into all of that negativity. And I think we can still do what needs to be done. Even if folks are not able to hear the clips that I had set up for us to hear, I can just basically make the points that are being made. And please forgive me again. I have to get better at this and get a little more organized. This is on me. But in terms of who initially sent me this clip, I believe it came from social media. Maybe somebody hit me up on Instagram. I'm not entirely sure, and at this point I can't remember. But let me at least share this. This is the video. The link to which is in the show notes. Dr. Claud Anderson, longtime author. Powernomics is, I think, his most famous book, the one that I years ago read very carefully, and have seen him lecture and heard him lecture and be referenced. Literally, I can't even count how many times. And in some cases we agree. And I think he makes some very valuable points and offers an important perspective. But I think in a number of cases, he makes some errors, perpetuates some mythology, and we'll get into that. I also, by the way, before we get out of here, want to come back and again, forgive me for this, but I because had some tech issues before we got started, and then Toni was right on time, and we didn't have all the time in the world. I skipped over some of the sincere greetings and well wishes to all of you who are joining us live, and those who will see this later, and those who are hearing this on iTunes or Spotify. I'm deeply appreciative that you check this out, and please like, share, subscribe, do all that, hit the bell, get all of the notifications, go to blackpowermedia.org and support the Patreon and help us continue to expand this collective. So anyway, I haven't seen the comments or the chat yet, but anyway, greetings to all of you anyway, and welcome. So I do also want to say that years ago when I was doing radio, this would have been in the early 2000s, I was doing radio with the WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C. Those listening or seeing this live later today, 3 to 5 p.m. is Brother Kaba's show, the African Deep Thought edition of Jazz and Justice. There's a lot of other great programming in the morning with Askia Muhammad. I think Jamil, my brother, is still working with him in the morning as well. And yeah, anyway, so definitely support and of course, much love and appreciation to Kasia Stitt. But years ago, I called Dr. Anderson's office and invited him to come on to talk about Powernomics. And I got a very interesting response from who reportedly was his assistant. And she told me something very interesting at the time. She said that Dr. Anderson was no longer giving interviews. And her reason when I asked why was that he said the Black community had not taken up his call sufficiently enough, and that the economic damage was insurmountable at this point. So he was going to redirect his energies to other more locally based projects. I thought that, I never have sought to reach out to him again. And it's only been in the last few years, admittedly, that I've seen a sort of resurgence of his name and reference and popularity. I may have been missing something, but so when this was sent to me, this is apparently the Comedy Central outlet for Charlemagne the God's show. In this episode, it was co-hosted or guest hosted by Chico Bean. Anyway, so because I'm not able to share the audio from the clips this morning, what I am going to encourage, and I would anyway, obviously, is people check the link. And they can watch the 30-minute interview in its entirety at their convenience. And obviously, if anybody thinks I got anything wrong, like my man Pierre at Comedy Hype said,
Put it in the comments,
and I'll check it out. All right, so let me just get to my notes here. Okay, so all right. So the discussion is broadly about Anderson's work and his argument around why Black people are in the condition economically, materially, that we find ourselves, and speaking specifically of Black people here in the United States. So initially he's asked the question, is capitalism cap? And he says, yes, capitalism is cap because it was affirmative action for whites written into the Constitution. And he talks about some of the problems with interviews like this, or with any interview, is that people, especially something being condensed into a 30-minute interview. And by the way, I don't know to what extent this suffered through editing. So I should also, I'm glad I'm reminded to make that point. I don't know to what extent the interview that we see suffers from an edit that does a disservice to Dr. Anderson. So what we get is roughly 30 minutes. I don't know how long it was. I don't know if I don't recall feeling like there were some obvious cuts, but I don't know. What I do recall is that his answers are often meandering, contradictory, but because, as would be the case with anybody in that situation, their overviews and summaries with a lot of information and points being made very quickly, it's hard to catch and then address every single one, particularly live as an interviewer, even if Chico Bean had any cause to disagree or want any elaboration, he wouldn't have been able to. But even as someone watching it after the fact, there's just so much that he says in these very meandering answers. But he does say that it was that capitalism is cap. So he starts off with, because it was affirmative action for whites written into the Constitution. That might not be how I would, define or explain capitalism or its behavior. But I think that is, he starts off, but then he does something that I often think is mistaken in its narrowness when he talks about the 3/5 clause, the 3/5 amendment. Hold on a quick second here. Hold on. Hold on a quick second. Forgive me, everybody. Something has just a quick second here. Yeah, I don't know what is going. Okay. For some reason, we got a little confusion in the studio here. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I see. Okay. Okay. Ear Doctor has come to the rescue, try to help with some clips. Okay. Hold on a second. All right. Well, let's do this then. Let's do this. I appreciate you, Ear Doctor. We didn't plan this. So, but I like the freestyle. So let's do this. I'm going to send you the clip in the private chat here. Cause I have it actually queued up to what I want to play. So if you would go ahead and share and play that one. Let's do that one right there. And I don't hear anything though. You got to share the audio though. Are you able to get the audio going? Because I don't hear the audio. By the way, I hope everybody checked out Ear Doctor's Wu-Tang Sundays last night. And if you didn't, go check it out on the channel, unless they've snatched it already. He's live every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. The joints are dope. But we're not hearing any audio from this, Ear Doctor. So let me at least just go ahead and continue on with this point here, and then feel free to continue to, and if you get the audio, we can play the clip that I have in the private chat there. But anyway, Dr. Anderson does this thing with the 3/5 clause that I think is often done and misses, I think, some important points that by describing the 3/5 clause simply as a method of dehumanization of African people. Certainly, African people had already, and of course, that was a further continuation of a dehumanization of African people who were being enslaved and abused, etc., and so forth. But the 3/5 clause also played another very important point, because it was not just about the suppression of Black humanity. It was as much about the suppression of the white the strength of the majority white vote, the white vote that did not own any enslaved people. So in other words, as both Du Bois and separately in another, obviously in his own distinct publication, Karl Marx, both arrived at the same number when assessing the amount of enslaved Africans held by whites in the South at the height of slavery. That is, and both concluded that roughly 7% of the white South owned 70% of all the enslaved population, meaning that overwhelmingly the white population who would have been looking eventually to become voters would have outnumbered the plantocracy, the slaveocracy. And could have theoretically used their vote to change their class position vis-a-vis whites. So it's not, of course, that African people weren't being dehumanized. That was already being the case through the process of enslavement and beyond. The 3/5 clause was akin to what I think happens today with Black and brown populations making up a majority of the population in many rural areas where they are held as captives in prisons, where by number they outnumber the white population that is nominally free and able to vote in that community. But because their electoral strength by number can't be used individually, but goes to the community in which they are held, they boost the electoral strength by their just being there of a white community that would not otherwise have that amount of electoral power. Obviously, it can't be used for Black and brown people held as captives any more than the clause at the time would have allowed, any more than the clause did or would or would not have allowed already enslaved people who could not vote anyway to be participants in the electoral system. So the 3/5 clause was ultimately a way to give the plantocracy an electoral strength beyond its numbers, given that only 7% owned a lion's share of those enslaved. Ear Doctor, are we able to play it? Did we get the audio straight? Thank you, sir. Go ahead. Let's run this right here.
And so when that was approved, as a matter of fact, when they wrote the Constitution, they had 57 people that came to the United States for wealth rights from you, and they would call them founding fathers. Those rich whites came here to use their laws. And then out of 57, about 54 participated in drafting the United States Constitution. 3 of them, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Alexander Hamilton. And they told him, so you 3 write up the Constitution of the United States. And they wrote in there exactly, here's what we want. And what did they want? They met for a whole week in Philadelphia, and they put guards on the doors and bars on the windows so nobody could hear this discussion. Discuss how can we write a constitution that says this is an open country for freedom and opportunity for everybody. At the same time, we're talking about enslaving people and using them. And they said, here's what we do. When we write this constitution, we use very broad, ambiguous language. One for language for whites and one for black folk. Now, when they talk to use these very broad, ambiguous terms, that was for whites. When blacks, they use words that blacks couldn't figure out. 3/5 of a human being, equal to a field animals, those who are indebted, those who are obligated in the labor class. See, all that was talking about black folk. John Adams and Alexander Hamilton asked Thomas Jefferson, so you write best. You wrote the Bill of Rights. We like that fancy language. You write it, put it together, and give it back to us. And use all those broad terms, stuff like all human beings have a God-given right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They didn't went there for no damn happiness. Nobody was sailing across the river for happiness. They were coming there for impersonal enrichment. Right. And after he approved the Constitution, then those 3 people with the founding fathers sent out messages to all those 5 groups that had been in that race trying to get across the ocean to build a new land, and told them, send us your people. And the emphasis they used, let's put that at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. Give us your tired, those who don't want to work anymore. give us your your poor, those who don't have any money. What England and France and two other countries did, they clean out their prisons, their mental institutions, and their almshouses with poor people and send them to the United States.
And I bet you they didn't put that in the Hamilton play on Broadway.
No,
left that right on out. And put none of that in there. But with that being said, well, you know, as you always talk about.
All right, so that was that one part. I just wanted to make that part clear. And in fact, yeah. All right. So that was that one part. I just wanted to get that one part out, and then I made my point about the 3/4 clause. I just like to. So, and what I think happens here is that it's not that what Dr. Anderson is saying is wrong per se. It's that I think that the narrowness of its focus and the very including a narrow focus on the accuracy of what is done to Black people and Black humanity. It allows for what sounds like a very strong pro-Black message to later, as I'm going to show or suggest here, devolve into some very reactionary conservative talk around and eventually some very contradictory talk around capitalism. So he's already answering, that is, Dr. Anderson is already answering that capitalism is cap because it was set up constitutionally as an affirmative action program for whites. All right, so that's the first part of his of what he does here. I want to play this next clip, and I think Ear Doctor has it pulled up. Let me add it here. Let's play this next piece here and check it out. Go ahead, Ear Doctor. Thank you very much.
What's first we have to do is learn how to practice group economics, group politics. They say, and one of the two things that hurt us most during slavery, and that been focused on. One was that our wealth was stolen from us. Black folk weren't poor people when they were slaves. They weren't holding any assets, but they had one thing, was the most powerful, strongest, wealthy, and valuable thing on earth. You know what that was?
No, sir.
Their labor. And see, and it's Black labor. Nobody teaches Black folks that. Your labor, that Black labor was the most invaluable thing they could have. Because you see, when they set up this Constitution, they said all of the wealth of this nation is going to be embedded in what we're going to set up right now. And the first thing is land. We said, so the whole purpose of slavery should have been an issue for Martin Luther King and all of our leadership for the last 200 or 300 years. And the purpose of slavery was to what? Was to transfer, to maldistribute 100% of all this country's land, resources, business, gold, silver, chrome, magnesium, timber, and rights, privileges, and ownership and control of everything, and put it in the hands of the dominant white society. That was the purpose of slavery.
Okay, Dr. Claud, my next question to you then is there such thing as Black capitalism?
Yes, there is.
And how's that
operated?
Yes, sir.
What we have to do is go back to what I told you earlier, that the whole point of slavery was the maldistribution of all resources, period, into the hands of one group.
Yes, sir.
What you have to do is create a situation where you can call some of that money back, or you can start creating your own wealth, and you can start getting it through reparations, or you can get it through inheritance.
Okay, well, why do you think Black people struggle in the system that's set up for us now? Why do you think that happens?
Because you don't own and control the land, the tools, the resources, and everything else. When land was given out in America during the slavery period, that immigration was an open policy for everybody around the world to come to this country and get resources, except Black folk. And during that period, first thing that George Washington said is that the wealth of this nation would be in the land. He said, I want 100,000 acres of free land. And Thomas Jefferson said, I want 100,000 acres of free land. And then after he heard that, Patrick Henry that says, give me life or give me death, he then said, I want 65,000 acres of free land. And then, so consequently, during the period of slavery, during that from point 1 up to 1862, that this country gave away 2 billion, billion, okay, acres of free land, but it all went to whites, not to Blacks. And see, and guess what? And all the land and then the wealth of the nation was in that land, in gas, in oil, in timber, and iron, and coal, and minerals, and all that kind of stuff. Black folk couldn't get any land because the Dred Scott decision of 1857 says you have no rights to get any land. And so the liberal white congressman in the Republican Party, called the Radical Republicans, says we're going to correct that by creating a second constitution. And that's to mean from 13 up to 15 will be a second constitution. This constitution, just like the first constitution from 1 through 12 amendments were strictly for whites, we're going to create another constitution. And following the Civil War, it's going to pick up 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment and the civil rights laws. And those 3 things or 4 things will be strictly for Black people.
But they don't got no land in there, though. But no land in neither one of them amendments.
Some of your strongest senators stood up on the floor of the House of Representatives and the Senate says this: there's only 2 things that Black folk can be in this country. You're either going to be slaves or you're going to be free. But to be free, minimally, you must have 40 acres, a mule, and 1.
Man, the only person that is operating on that is Spike Lee. He's the only one that got 40 acres and a mule. And that's just a production company. That's crazy. You know what? Speaking of that, with it being such disparagement.
Hold on a second. So there's I think that's my fault. I think I missed a part there. But listen, so okay. On the one hand, oh, wait a minute. Okay. All right. I think what we need to do is go back and get Ear Doctor. Can you cue this clip up again? Because I think I missed the part that, because there's a part, first of all, there's a part previously where he talks about these professors on college campuses that talk nonsense about socialism. And I think we missed that part, because the part I just had us play where he's talking about group economics comes after some of his discussion about how Du Bois defines capitalism, which I definitely want to come back to. So if we, but in terms of what he just said about group economics, and group politics, this is where, and then by saying that there is Black capitalism and that we should be looking for reparations and inheritance. This is sort of the point that I keep saying is missed in all of this. On the one hand, he will acknowledge that we have no land. We have been, through policy, kept out of access to land, kept out of the access to wealth creating capability, but then says that we must return to a Black capitalist ethic involving group economics that starts with a discussion again of inheritance and reparations, both of which would require control over public policy and political power. The other part of it is, if we're practicing Black capitalism, then we're not practicing group economics. Because as is the case today and historically, we've talked about this before, across racial lines, while there of course are cavernous differences between the overall wealth accumulated, 20% of the population controls 80% of the wealth in each community: white, Black, brown, Asian, whatever. So that's not what he's suggesting by advocating Black capitalism, is that he's conflating Black capitalism with group economics after having condemned in the part that I want us to come back to, socialism, Cuba. He inaccurately references Du Bois in his definition of capitalism, and then freezes Du Bois in 1915. So these are some of the things that I wanted to make sure we covered. And then he comes back to talk about did he say, and Ear Doctor, anybody in the chat, I'm actually looking at, did I miss the part where he talked about the Black man that is the reason we have chattel slavery? Anyway, Ear Doctor, you said you're ready. Let's go. Let's play this part for again. And I think some of it might be a repeat, but let's play it anyway. Please. Thank you.
Start to get to that point of generating black wealth.
Capitalism never existed until about the 15th century. Prior to that time, we had mercantilism all around the world. Europe was a mercantilism stretch all the way around, as where people have just made a product, sold it. There was no system. And so every individual could go out in the mornings into the marketplace and sell his vegetables or sell whatever he wants to sell, shoes or clothes, and that was it. And so no, capitalism came out of black people. And that's why it's a little concerning to me when I hear a lot of professors, particularly on college campuses, talking about anti-capitalism. Capitalism is the best thing we got going. And the opposite of that would be socialism. Capitalism means private sector owning and controlling resources and being able to make profit. People say, well, Dr. Anderson, let's go for socialism and just push socialism where the government owns everything and they control everything and with restraints. And all the profits go straight to government. I ran that down in Cuba. Very few people own anything. Ever since about the late 1950s, no private businesses of any magnificence. Everything is just simply same cars have been there since 1950 are still running. Just repair the same old cars. And a few businesses that exist, you got to be close to a prince or a god to get a business in Cuba.
Wow.
And that's why most of those Cubans that came into Miami, they flew out of there right quick because they wanted to practice capitalism. So let's go back and talk about what capitalism is right fast. Capitalism, as you and I discussed earlier, capitalism came about because of what happened with Henry the Navigator back in the early 1400s.
Yes, sir.
And somewhere between 1445 and 1455. He picked up almost 16 black slaves, they weren't slaves at that point, blacks off the coast of Africa. And he brought them back into the European theater. And he decided, what do I do with these people? And so he went to the Vatican in Italy and gave them to the Vatican. And why? Because the Catholics had a reputation at that time around the world as being the religion that was concerned about helping people that needed help. And then people that were classified as slaves to be their mediators, to bring comfort to them and bear comforters. And so the Catholics, but at the same time, the Catholic was milking them in the sense that whatever resources they had or they could get out of them, they took it to the Catholic Church. That's where at that time they said all roads lead to Rome, because the Catholic is spread out all around the world. Catholic is going into the Middle East, they're going into Latin America, they're going into the Caribbean, and they were going there trying to pick up one thing that was extremely important: wealth. They wanted wealth. And the Vatican was loaded down with wealth, all kind of wealth, where we had gold this, gold that. But after Henry the Navigator gave those 16 blacks to the Vatican Church, the Vatican then said, we got to use these people. We use them as labor around the Vatican. And they used them for about 40-some years. And then about 1488, Pope Innocent came out and with a public edict that says, you know what? I got an idea that we no longer have to keep encouraging people to use Indians and primitive groups for slaves. There's another group of people that'll be better at providing labor than the Indians, who are weaker people. Let's use Africans, these blacks out of Africa. And he said, up to this time, to be a slave, you had to be one of three things. One, you had to be a victim of religious persecution. Two, you have personal indebtedness to somebody, and they now say you owe me, and so now you're my property. And three, again, to be a POW, prisoner of war.
Yes, sir.
And so Pope Innocent's public edict says, let's do it this way. Let's put those three things aside and say, here's a better group of people that you can use, not based on those three factors, but it's based on another fact. That's on their skin color. That's them highly recognizable. You can spot them any place. You know who they are. They can't just escape and run away. You can spot them in a minute and use them. And so he threw in the whole thing about skin color. Now that was 1488. But ironically, at the same time, Columbus was making these expositions into the Western world and going to different places, down in Haiti and down into the Caribbean islands. And finally, he says, you know, there's some land up around in here. I only saw a very few scattered people there look like Indians. This will be open land. I could use this. So he went back to England, went back to Spain, and he told the people, so, you know, I found a lot of vacant land, but only a few people on it. And right now here in Europe, We are undergoing terrible conditions. We are overrun right now with crime, criminals, highwaymen robbing people, killing people on the roads. We got famine where people are starving to death. They can't find enough food in the country. And we also got a lot of other problems that cannot be solved right now because we don't have enough land and money to do it. They said, what if we were to take and do two things? What if we were to put all that vacant land in the Western world up for grabs and say, now let's use these blacks and use them as labor. And they said, and that was about the late 1490s. So by 1502, they put those two together and came up with what you call capitalism. Capitalism is owning and controlling the land, the tools, the resources, and using other people's labor to enrich yourself and your business. That is capitalism.
Goodness gracious. And came from somebody named Pope Innocent. What type of name is that for a motherfucker that would do something so evil? Pope Innocence. That's crazy. Well, there we have the definition of capitalism right there. So I'm going to ask you another question. Yes, sir.
Another point is that now, later on, about 1915, W.B. Du Bois defined capitalism. He came pretty close to saying the same thing. Okay. And now it's much simpler the way he said it. He says that capitalism is simply just getting like having 3 to 4 ears of corn. He said, and you get seeds and get the corn. You plant, you harvest, you sell, and you save the other seeds for next year harvest. Make profit off. He said that's capitalism: earning, savings, selling, and planting the seeds for next year.
There you go.
All right, so and Ear Doctor, thanks again for the production support, and I believe we're going to have in a couple minutes one more clip, and I'm going to put the link in the private chat for you. I'll come to this in a couple minutes. Thank you again, sir. So, okay. So, and to me, this relates very well to what we're going to talk about in a little bit when we're talking about Dhoruba Bin-Wahad's very important statement. Because to me, this is one of the reasons why so many in my generation, so many in the generations that come into my classrooms are what I would just simply describe as economically or politically confused. What Dr. Anderson said there, and again, to the extent that this is not the fault of editing, although I'm not sure how it could be, but you know, that answer is wildly contradictory on so many different levels. First of all, let's start with the whole point about professors in the classroom teaching socialism. I'm happy to be corrected on this, but from my own university to universities across this country here in the United States, I am unaware of any socialist economic studies program or institute or school of socialist studies. There are business schools. There are plenty of mainstream economics programs and departments. I'm not aware of any Marxist school of economics. So to the extent that there are left-wing academics or those like myself and others who would talk positively about socialism or communism or Marx in the classroom or in our work, we do so as marginalized, outside of the mainstream, under-supported, if not totally assaulted and attacked, demonized. So this idea that permeates much of these segments of Black studies, segments of Black nationalist and Black radical communities, that there is this liberal left-wing education taking place on college campuses, that is wildly inaccurate. Overt socialism is not welcomed. So that's one thing. His comments about Cuba are just wildly anti-historical. First of all, Cuba has welcomed and supported and defended Assata Shakur, the late Nahanda Abiodun, and others. So points, just on that. Points. Socialists, by the way. Okay. attacked and exiled from the United States largely for their black radical application of socialism. Okay. Never mind everything else about the Cuban Revolution. I would really hope that I would love for Dr. Anderson to have a conversation with the good folks, you know, Eugene Puryear, Netford Freeman, anybody, PSL, BAP, PACA, AAPRP. I would love for him to have some conversations and revisit some of that discussion of Cuba and its importance historically to African people in this country and around the world. Never mind the accuracy of their application of socialism and this idea, as he talks about, the reason they fix cars and that they have cars that work is because, one, they are there is a blockade. There is routine efforts, terrorist attacks sponsored by the United States against the Cuban Revolution. There is all kinds of so they are cut off from the broader economy. But then there is the positive side of, why do we need new cars? If we can fix a car and keep it running, why do we have to go by this capitalistic planned obsolescence lifestyle of we create it so it will die, so we have to buy another one? That's one of the reasons why the planet is dying. I mean, there's just so many things wrong with that, and Cuba and socialism deserves so much better than what they got in that conversation. This idea, though, that he also contradicts himself. Capitalism, he says, is both good and born out of the enslavement of African people. But somehow socialism is the problem. So he recounts a relatively accurate history of the rise of European imperialism and the development of capitalism on the backs of enslaved Africans, but then somehow says that is the system that we need to engage further. And that socialism is somehow to be demonized. That is a wild contradiction. What did I write here? Capitalism allows people to own as opposed to socialism, right? Because he's saying that we don't want the government to own. We want individuals to own. As again, somehow as if private business and industry is more suitable to the Black condition or to a free society. Socialism is not per se the government gets all the money. It's as he talks about, if there is a maldistribution created by capitalism, we need a planned redistribution, which would be created by socialism. So it's not that the government takes everything, it's that the government assures that nobody goes without in a properly functioning socialist society. One that, again, when people point to condemn the examples of, whether it be Cuba, the Soviet Union, or elsewhere, the first thing they always leave out are the outside forces that have constantly attacked, destabilized, discouraged, assassinated, etc., people who have tried to develop those societies. I remember the good folks. I did not know this until I went into a study session with Eugene Puryear and Brian Becker of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And I get it that Dr. Anderson and others might not want to engage these folks or certainly join those organizations, but some of the history would be important. 17 countries invaded Russia after the 1917 Russian Revolution. 17, no less than 17. So if you are invaded and blockaded and attacked and insulted, I mean, how can you then turn around and say, well, that's because socialism failed? Meanwhile, look at what capitalism has produced: enslavement, colonization, wild inequality, and the need for a Dr. Anderson to be brought in to explain to people what to be done. Now, our disagreements notwithstanding, the point is he's only there to address a persistent problem created by capitalism while he's telling us that capitalism is the solution. He then goes into that point about Du Bois, which is again a pet peeve, but shouldn't really just be a pet peeve. It's just objective analysis. You cannot quote Du Bois, an avowed socialist, misquoting and narrowing and misrepresenting something he would have said in 1915 if, for instance, you're going to ignore just something we happen to be studying right now in my AAPRP study circle, The World in Africa, where Du Bois outlines how capitalism and imperialism are destroying everything and everybody, how capitalism is and imperialism are are what undergird or are the font or the point of departure for all of the world wars. The second one, after which he's writing this book. He's saying the world in Africa. He's saying Africa is being destroyed. We need a Pan-Africanist socialist society because imperialists are destroying Africa, because the whole point of World War II, as is all of these other wars, are ultimately the resources of Africa. He doesn't quote Black Reconstruction. He doesn't quote anything beyond 1915, and he certainly doesn't quote Du Bois's concluding thoughts during his time as an expat in Ghana, again trying to organize an Nkrumah style Pan-Africanism under scientific socialism. So that he doesn't even mention Du Bois was a socialist while misrepresenting his definition of capitalism. So that's why when we would have come to the clip that I ended up playing out of order, and he's talking about group economics, and yes, there is a Black capitalism. The contradictions are just overwhelming. So in fact, he says in that other clip, and I think I might have messed that part up, but he talks about, he makes reference to something that I want to see if I can. I put the link in the show notes, and I don't honestly. We've already talked about on this program why I'm not necessarily a fan of this particular Black Studies outlet, but the fact is that they have some important work there, and in this case, it can't be ignored. But he does make reference, and I don't know if I can, yeah, I can, right. Because at one point, Anderson, scroll this up here. And no, this is not Tyler Perry, it's Tyler Perry. So let's not, I don't want anybody to think that we out here finding articles relevant to the situation from Tyler Perry. But in this article, The Curious History of Anthony Johnson from Captive African to Right-Wing Talking Point, Tyler Perry makes an important historical intervention on something Dr. Anderson reports in the piece, in the video we're talking about. So he comes back to say, after describing how capitalism is born off of African enslavement, and gives this twisted definition of capitalism, and then somehow says at the same time, yes, there is a Black capitalism that we should access through reparations and inheritance. And I don't know where the inheritance comes in if Black people don't have anything to pass down, and they don't have control over the public policy, as do those in power now, who use inheritance to make sure that wealth we all as a society help create doesn't get redistributed to address the maldistribution that Dr. Anderson is talking about. So in other words, what Dr. Anderson is saying is he wants Black people to engage in the estate tax argument, or the death tax, as they like to call it, argument, the conservatives like to call it, which protects through public policy the ability for rich white people to pass down their wealth to their descendants. Why this would be something we would want through Blackness, and to see this as a positive and to be recreated in Blackness, I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. The point being, we all create the wealth that the wealthy walk away with, and then use public policy not only to take that wealth we all create, but to make sure that only their heirs access. So why we would want that, I don't know. Why, again, Dr. Anderson makes reference to Dr. King by saying that he weakened us, that what Dr. King did through this argument of integration weakened us, again, wildly disrespects Dr. King and what he was ultimately doing, and the concluding arguments he was making, again, often about socialism, that capitalism and imperialism are a problem, that federal public policy has to be directed to solve the problems, that Black business is insufficient. I've already done a video, please check it, on how Maggie Anderson and others keep misrepresenting Dr. King as saying Black capitalism and buying Black was something that would work for us, when he said the exact opposite. Dr. King, by the way, also, as others like to point out, I think appropriately, walked through the fire of the shadow of death, or whatever, the valley of the shadow of death, and risked his life and ultimately gave his life. So I get that people like to make this argument that integration has weakened Black communities, but as I and others have been trying to argue, Marisa Baradaran is right in this. You can segregate people, but you cannot segregate money. So this idea that segregated Black economies are somehow better is part of the mythology and the fantasy. Now, again, I'm not advocating that we want white teachers teaching Black kids and all this. I get all of those other issues around integration, but part of the mythology being promoted here is that economically Black people could do better in a segregated situation, and that's mythological. That's not how things work. Plus, without public policy, political power, Black people have no ability to either create segregated communities or prevent gentrification. So it's not that Dr. King created, or a liberal a liberal reading of the civil rights movement. It's not that created integration, and it's not even that's not even what Dr. King and others were really advocating. They weren't advocating that Black people be next to white people that makes Black people better. They were saying, in a different way, the wealth we're all creating is not being distributed properly. But it's not Dr. King that created integration or gentrification. That's the political power. That's capitalist imperialist expansion. That's what the Civil War was. It was the North, the capitalist industries of the North invading the land that produced the natural resources they wanted. It was a colonial invasion. Again, that's what imperialism needs. Capitalism needs expansion. But he's promoting this idea that somehow, the segregated. So, again, right. So maldistribution is what socialism is meant to be a response to. But then he also makes reference to this guy and this is why I have this article pulled up, because he makes a reference and he says, and he tells this without reference to the name Anthony Johnson. Dr. Anderson makes this point that he makes reference to this black British dude who was the first Black man to actually own, who was the first person to actually own enslaved Africans. So, and his point was somehow in making that convoluted argument that capitalism started with Black people, both through the enslavement of Africans, but then also literally in this country, the first African being owned literally as chattel was by a Black man named Anthony Johnson, which he doesn't name. Dr. Anderson doesn't name him. But as I just quickly note here, first of all, that history is just wrong. And I put this article in the show notes so people can read it in its entirety on their own from Tyler Perry. By 1651, Johnson gained his freedom and acquired land and servants. So Johnson had been an enslaved African who by 1651 gains his freedom and acquired land and servants, eventually attaining legal ownership for life over a Black man named John Cassor, a condition that separated servitude for a lifetime from slavery, labor for life. That means separated servitude, labor for time, from slavery, labor for life. In 2010, Glenn Beck, the formerly famous former Fox, whatever, asserted that this case reveals how Johnson owned the first state-sponsored slave in American history. And like-minded commentators unsurprisingly agree. In the same episode, Beck insisted that Johnson's story proves that slavery is a human problem. It's not a white condition or a black condition. As the narrative goes, if a black man also owned enslaved people of African descent, it assumes that economics, not racism, bolstered U.S. chattel slavery. For Beck, the existence of black slave owners inverts the narrative that American slavery was predicated on white supremacy. However, this narrow framework ignores preceding cases and misrepresents slavery's complex evolution in British Atlantic colonies. So then the article does go into detail about the history of how officially by law this country went from indentured servitude to slavery and who becomes this, that, and the third. My only point in bringing this up is that Dr. Anderson, as I'm suggesting in these other instances regarding Cuba, Du Bois, defining capitalism, universities' role in promoting socialism, and a few other issues that we're going to get to in a moment, he's misrepresenting history and sort of taking conservative arguments and trying to put a black radical presentation to them, so that by saying that by reciting the horrific history that leads to capitalism's development, but that somehow black people's involvement from the beginning in it, both as enslaved chattel and then owners of chattel, somehow means that this is the system we should engage. And in fact, he says in this interview, this is what we have to engage. This is what we have to do to get free. It's again, just like I'm arguing broadly speaking about black capitalism, buying power, etc. It takes a very conservative, reactionary, backwards argument, wraps it in black radical rhetoric and symbolism, and claims it as progressive advice or analysis or programmatic direction. All right, Ear Doctor, let's play this next clip where he is asked, and I thank you again for doing this. He's asked why capitalism. Let's play this.
Should we buy into a system that requires you to exploit others? Because this whole time we've been talking about capitalism, and it's just been exploitation. Why should we want to buy into a system that operates on those morals and principles?
Because that's the only system you got going. And the other opposition is that, but you own nothing. Then you don't have to worry about it. That's called socialism, where the government owns everything. Then and the profit goes to the government. Yeah, see, if that were to happen, see, then black folk would become an island of socialism in an ocean of capitalism. See, for instance, Russia used to be a socialistic country. They're going capitalistic now. China was a socialistic country. They've gone capitalistic now, where China, even when I was with President Carter, China was pretty much a backward country at that time, way back in the 1960s, 1970s. But now they're a leading nation where we used to have to lend them money. Now we are borrowing money from them. You know why? They went capitalistic. Right now, 57% of everything China produces, we buy it from them. And what we're doing now, they're taking the money out of this country and putting it in China. We were foolish enough to play a game about not being capitalistic. We gave away all of our industries. We used to produce about 97% of all the commercial products in the world. Now we don't produce a damn thing except maybe the silicon chip out there. Now all of our money is going to Taiwan. We buy 57%, 47% of everything that India produces. Taiwan, South Korea, all the shoes. We used to produce all the radios, TVs, movies, cameras, everything. We don't produce a damn thing now because we don't want to be capitalistic. You better become capitalistic. You got to be able to make a profit because you got to pay the people. So right now, people in those foreign countries that came in and starting in the 1950s, when we started moving away from it, we started integrating, and all those big major industries moved into third world countries. And so now those third world countries got your money. We are buying products from them, and half those products won't even work.
Man, well, how can we thrive under the capitalism? Like, is it possible? With that being said, you say it's the best thing for us we got going. How do we thrive in it? How do we as black people thrive under this system?
We thrive because we get some surplus capital in. We pool our own money. We pool our own money, buy our own products or services, and we build our own factories and industries in our own communities. And in our own communities, we have not one single community in America that's black, not one.
And a lot of black neighborhoods, no black communities.
All we got are black neighborhoods. A black neighborhood is where you eat and sleep. A black neighborhood is like a bucket with a hole in it, pouring water and it runs out. Everybody knows you cannot be a competitive group with no communities. But right now, everybody coming to this country got enough sense to say, I'm gonna build Chinatown, Frenchtown, Germantown, Hockeytown. They build everything for their own people. And in that community, to qualify as a community, you must have three things. You must have a wholly independent economy that provides services, goods, and products, and jobs, and business and wealth producing opportunities for your own people. That's the first thing you must have. The second thing you must have a code of conduct that tells you to buy from your own people first before you go down 2 miles down the road and buy it. And the last thing you must have elected officials that will represent you first and foremost before they represent everybody. Every time a black person runs for office now, first thing he says, I'm for everybody. And you should be running for office then. You need to go sit down and watch TV at home. Your first responsibility is to take care of those who put you in office. And then that's what you put your hand on the Bible for. Say, and when you get sworn in office, you say this, I hereby swear on the Bible to protect and serve those who voted me into office. That's what Biden did. He swore an oath. But guess what? He got twice as much support from blacks than he did for any other group in America. And guess what? He haven't even mentioned the word black yet in a positive manner. And after the first year.
Yeah, he really
and see, you know why? Because black people put people in office and never demand anything. Right. That's your fault. You should never support anything, not a candidate, not a political party, nor a business that doesn't support you.
Right.
If it's not supporting you, don't support it. And see, other groups won't do it. They will take care of their own people first and foremost. And most of my friends, whether my friends are lawyers or dentists, they tell you up front, no, I'm gonna support the Jews first. That's what the Bible said. That's what John said. John said, yeah, I'll go off and preach to the world, try to save the world, but first I'm gonna save Jews.
Even if this country gave us reparations, let's just say we got reparations, do you believe that it will actually help black people? Do you think it will close the wealth gap in America?
I think it will close it some. Can't close it completely because it has to be more than money. First of all, you have to include land and also access to resources. Like I just mentioned to you earlier about if you're going to build the first high-speed rail system in the country, and black folk are proposing it, and black folks have already designed it to run from the East Coast all the way across to Los Angeles. Why in the hell don't you put some of that money in this budget you got coming up? If you're going to put $88 trillion into infrastructure, why don't you put some of that money so black folk, for the first time in history, can own their own rail lines or have some ownership along with whites on a high-speed rail system running across the damn South.
Right, we can call it Soul Train.
That's right. But right now we call it the Southern Flyer as example. Right now, they got high-speed rail system across Europe, China, and Japan. And why is it the United States doesn't have one? If black folks propose it, why don't you put in some of that money to help build a black super rail system?
All right.
United States that can fly.
All right. So thank you here, Doctor. And just on the production side, again, I appreciate you, and we're good with the clips. So you could take a break. I appreciate you though, man. Good looking out, popping up and on like that coming through. So let me start with just quickly before, kind of where we agree. And this is where I think all of the confusion and the contradictions come in. So I appreciate, I haven't been in the chat yet, but I see, my man, Geechee, has sent me somebody's comment that says, I don't care. Dr. Claud is brilliant. I don't know. I'll skip some of that. It's a waste of time going back and forth about petty issues when everyone's larger goal is the same. We want to close the racial wealth gap. We want to build black wealth. Whoever made the claim up was clearly just trying to get us to pay attention and start spending with each other. So again, this is why I'm saying I am not critical of Dr. Anderson in this sense or others for the most part. For as enemies, with hostility. But I don't think these are petty issues if I'm getting the context of that quote right. And this is something that's often brought to me when I raise these criticisms. But they're not petty differences. I think they're major problems of analysis and understanding. that I think do inhibit our potential and where we can go. So for instance, the contradictions here are pretty clear. In addition to what I've already said, just in this last clip, what Dr. Anderson is advocating is public policy that supports and redistributes wealth we all create in the society to Black businesses so that those businesses can grow. In other words, it's the same arrangement these major white corporations and others have in this society, where they will claim private capitalism and the private business world can do everything, but all of them depend on, for a lion's share of their wealth, contracts and redistributed wealth through the federal government, whether it's redistributed through the Pentagon, redistributed through CARES and HOPE Acts, redistributed through banking policy. Like I said, what the conservatives call the death tax or the estate tax, like all of those policies extract wealth. And again, we're creating the wealth, whether we own a business or not. Again, this is part of the mythology that I'm trying to point out that has been intentionally created, and encouraged by our actual enemies for distractive purposes, to distract us. Black capitalism, chief among them. So he's right in saying we need political power. We need candidates that are beholden to our communities. We shouldn't be voting for campaigns and candidacies and parties that don't help our people. I get and agree with all of that, but that's exactly my point. That's my point about the after party concept. That's been my point about condemning many, and I don't know where Dr. Anderson was, but many in his circle they're the ones telling us we got to vote for Biden. We got to vote for the lesser of evil. There are many in those Black nationalist communities that will, on the one hand, promote this radical Blackness, but when it comes to electoral politics, they will vote for these folks. They will encourage us to vote for these folks, or they will tacitly encourage us to vote for these folks by not advocating that we do something else. So there's not a discussion of the development of a political party. There's not a discussion. So his three things, I think, are far inferior to George Jackson's. So when he says we need an independent economy, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as an independent economy anywhere. We need a code of conduct. I could agree with that, which is really public policy. And we need elected officials. So I like George Jackson's three. We need an underground army, but I'm not advocating that because I'm not doing it, and I'm not, we're not ready for that. We're not there, and I'm not advocating that. I just happen to think that it's logical. But we also need an alternative political party and an alternative media system that will promote the idea of revolution. So there is some overlap. That's what I'm saying. It's not like I think Dr. Anderson is an enemy. I just think that there are some important distinctions to be made. So I do think we need an independent political movement to get political power, however that comes to be. Again, I'm sometimes misinterpreted here as saying we should be voting for Democrats or something like that. That's not what I'm saying. We do need elected officials because what Dr. Anderson is saying is right. This is where Dr. King himself said, without federal redistribution of the wealth we are all creating, there's no independent economy anyway, because he's saying our independent economy is based on federal public policy that redistributes wealth we create and invests in Black businesses. Now, because people simply insert this layer of Black business as opposed to elected officials or representatives of the community, in other words, we shouldn't have to be entrepreneurs to benefit from the wealth we create when we engage those who are. I don't care about how good someone is at coming up with ideas or marketing their ideas if they don't have healthy, if they don't have healthy, living, conscious, or I guess they don't even need that. If they don't have a living person who will come in and shop and buy their product, it doesn't matter. They cannot create wealth. If they cannot attract venture capital and further investment, there is no business. In fact, I just saw a documentary the other day that was talking about that broke down the only real, for those of us who remember Blockbuster Video, the only reason Blockbuster streaming service didn't overtake Netflix was from the speed of one investment. Netflix got venture capital before Blockbuster streaming got it and then got bought up. That was it. It wasn't that Blockbuster didn't have the idea. In fact, they had the idea first. To move from their already successful tangible video rental service to a streaming service. They were actually ahead of Netflix. But the venture capital went to Netflix. So that's it. So that's sort of my point here. I shouldn't have to be a good business leader to benefit from the wealth that the commerce in my society creates. The benefits of the wealth that commerce creates. Reparations requires a political movement. So I agree that it should include land and resources, but that's not happening. They're not the 4 white men that own more land in this country than all of black people combined. They're not giving that up without some sort of political movement. And once that land is given up, to make the owners of it black, but have the wealth distributed as in a black capitalist way, meaning we will just see more maldistribution to a black elite, that's not the answer. So if you want a soul train, you have to have all kinds of things. You have to have venture capital, federal investment. You would have to have whatever the license, the deals are, the rights to build your railway wherever. And then why would you want a soul train or when this bullet train idea that would be federally funded, as is discussed by Dr. Anderson, should just be federally funded? That is, it shouldn't matter if it's a black business that builds it. All of us should benefit from the wealth that goes into it and that it creates. So this incessant focus on a black capitalist, black business person intermediary is part of the mythology here that I think needs to be discarded if we're actually going to move anywhere. By the way, he does one other thing, and I don't know if it's possible or if I'm capable or if it's been done and I'm just not aware, but this constant comparison to Jews and other groups has got to stop. Black people, obviously, are not Jews. There is a specific historical relationship going back millennia that positioned Jews to do what they have been able to do to the extent they've been able to do it. And I don't know why we would want to see black people replicating a very white supremacist, you talk about integration, a white supremacist integration into a society that previously didn't even want them to be white, doesn't see them as white really still to this day, and that only accepts them to the extent that they participate in an imperial system, a Zionist projection of Western empire into the so-called Middle East, and whatever their negative interventions are here in the United States through a reactionary relationship with black people. So whether we're talking about traditionally as landlords or bosses in entertainment, whatever, why would we want to see black replication of that? As if it were possible. The only reason Jews were placed in that position in the first place was because of their previous relationship with the Gentiles and the imperial states that have emerged against the interests of all humanity, by the way. So again, the specifics in the history of why there are Chinatowns and to what extent they are beneficial to the Chinese people is itself mythological. We covered here a few weeks ago the earlier this year claim that China had eradicated extreme poverty. How? Not through capitalism, through state-sponsored socialist redistributionist policies. So this idea that they're purely capitalist is misunderstanding what's happening in China. I would argue probably the same thing in Russia. And again, to what extent are these efforts beneficial to the people there? Do we really want to replicate the post-Soviet Union Russia? Again, why, Dr. Anderson, has the Soviet Union collapsed and evolved into a Russia with in that book that the author was killed, actually. I didn't know that. The Rise of Gangster Capitalism, I think was the book. Why would we want that? So he doesn't talk about the conditions of the people in those countries or in those communities. What are the conditions of the Chinese people in Chinatowns? Is it even possible for Black people to replicate those communities going forward? Again, I don't think any of that's even possible, much less something that we would want. So anyway, so that's why these are just some of the, anyway, I just wanted to go through some of that. I think that's basically all I had on this, but I think that oh, that was the other point. He said the only celebrities he trusts are Ice Cube and to a lesser extent Kanye West. Now, this is what I'll do as a segue. Among the reasons why I think that there is so much persistent confusion around economics and politics is the absence of, in this moment, sustained, large enough, radical enough, organized political social movements. I think we're still suffering in the aftermath of COINTELPRO, and into this vacuum has entered a lot of ignoble actors, bad analysis, psychological warfare, and confusion. So again, I don't think Kanye and Ice Cube, and again, I've just talked about Kanye, I don't think that there are enemies. I think that the confusion that they exhibit and the relationship that I think would also be similarly confused between Dr. Anderson and Ice Cube or Kanye is the result of that. Not that these people are enemies or the evildoers, so to speak, but that we don't have movements enough to affect or to affect them in the way that we would want. And then celebrity not coming out of politically organized spaces is not going to have the solution. And they're not going to have the power to enact it if they wanted to, if they did have the solution. By the way, so I think, and I'll stop there, I think that is why, as I want to get to now in this important statement from Dhoruba, what we see that Dhoruba is responding to, and why, unfortunately, and I hate to have to say this, I think I disagree with him. So anyway, I mix what I like. We'll be right back.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us here as we go a little bit longer than usual here at I Mix What I Like live on Black Power Media. Please do take a moment, if you haven't already, and hit that join, like, share, or subscribe button. Click the bell so you're not missing any of our latest that comes almost faster than I can even keep up with. And there's so much more coming. So again, and I will, before we leave this morning, and even certainly after, later, come back and check some of the comments in the chat and try to respond to some of it. And of course, we can always do more on this as well. Okay, so the other day, I think this was on the Remix Morning Show. We talked about, and we played the clip. Yeah, it was on the Remix Morning Show, right? Because we played the clip from Fred Hampton Jr. talking about why he didn't like Fred Hampton leftists and others claiming the name of Fred Hampton. Doing so without not only permission, but without the politics and that solidarity of struggle. My only 2 cents on that was that I appreciated Fred Jr. for saying that. I have felt a similar way. I feel a kind of way about people claiming certain names and references without particularly recognizing or adhering to or even agreeing with the radical politics involved with those references. Dhoruba sent me a message. Of course, Dhoruba Bin-Wahad, interviewed on this platform many times, and looking forward to many more. Co-founder of or member of the BLA, member of the Black Panther Party, political prisoner, my favorite philosopher and political analyst. But he wrote back. He sent me something, and he, critical of today's generation, and I invited him on to talk about it, and he said no. And he said, read the following instead. So I will. So, quote, "First, let me say I am too heartbroken, ashamed, embarrassed, and humiliated in the wake of recent events to speak publicly again on live formats. I am so disappointed in this generation that I would feel foolish and crazy if I did any interview of Zoom meeting because I know now deep in my heart that I am living among a callous and venal generation with little integrity, dignity, or sense of their place in this world. So no, I am not willing to come on the air and express myself on the issue of branding or its related issues. However, I trust that you would announce my response to your invitation as follows. In response to your invitation to talk about the branding of revolutionaries and the historical notoriety of organizations like the BPP or BLA, I am unwilling to talk publicly, not because I have nothing to say, but because I believe that whatever I say would be an exercise in futility. Here is why. I am absolutely ashamed of being in this country amidst a generation of Black people who are cowards and who have cowered in the face of unspeakable dehumanization and disregard by the white supremacist capitalist construct that is white America. I am deeply ashamed and unable to hold my head high as a Black person while surrounded by a venal, self-centered, and arrogant generation of Black people who have systematically placed micro-oppression of small segments within the Black community above the macro-oppression of an entire people and think that somehow that's correct and laudable. I am heartbroken that opportunists, charlatans, and messianic leaders have persuaded the masses of Black people that we can liberate and empower ourselves with leadership by victimhood, and who have convinced Black people only they possess the power of prayer and must follow movements ideologically led by victimhood rather than revolutionary abolitionist politics and organization. Admittedly, I am sad and despondent that some of the best years of my youth were wasted and served little useful purposes other than to inculcate in another generation of Black youth the feeble-minded notion that white America would deliver justice for Black people without their knowledge of certain retribution, or that social and political equality can be achieved absent an equal distribution of the pain and anguish we as people must live with and endure every day. In other words, in the real world, there is no justice without retribution, and no social and political equality without equal distribution of the pain. I mistakenly thought that by embracing the warrior and radical spirit of my ancestors who rose up against the people, system, and hateful mentality that murdered us, kidnapped us from Mother Africa, dehumanized us at every turn, and diabolically instilled in each generation of Black people fear and terror of racist violence and inevitable annihilation until we could only imagine resistance to racist tyranny with their permission and assert our humanity and power on their terms and under their benevolence. In short, the white supremacist construct that began as a European settler state that devolved into terms that under their In short, the white supremacist construct that began as a European settler state devolved into terms and under their benevolence. In short, the white supremacist construct. Okay, hold on a second. This is my fault. Hold on. In short, the white supremacist construct that began as a European settler state and devolved into the capitalist nation state today has convinced Black people, African people, that we cannot win our freedom, our own freedom, and the dignity as a sovereign people without selling our souls to servicing white privilege, greed, and wealth to achieve the placebo of second-class citizenship. It is in this deeply bitter shame that washes over me as I watch our enemies, the very enemies of the sun that nourishes brown and Black melanin of our skin, arrogantly define their justice for our pain, while our children beg to advise them that, quote, Black lives matter, rather than impose on our enemy that Black liberation matters. I therefore decline to speak, talk, or otherwise whistle in the wind on media platforms until such a time as this generation finds its destiny, live up to it, or further betray it. If this generation looks for me in the whirlwind, I will come, wade in the water, and woe to those who cannot swim. End quote. Powerful words from Dhoruba Bin-Wahad. And the only thing I tried to share with him and what I would have wanted to invite a discussion of with him is that I don't think sufficient appreciation for the context that produced this generation is included. And I am uncomfortable with that kind of condemnation of a generation, even as I understand he has every right to tell me I'm wrong and to take that position. And if anybody has earned the right to say anything, I think it is Dhoruba, certainly whether I or anyone else agrees. But I do think, and that was also something that I disagree with in terms of the off-quoted statement from Frantz Fanon, that each generation must, fulfill its, how did even Dhoruba just put it? That each generation must find its destiny, live up to it, or further betray it. It was a great line. I get it. And I understand it in the context that revolution is a process that must be passed down generationally, but that's sort of the point. I certainly don't feel like my generation was passed down some radical movement any more than successive generations, not the least of which this one, has had anything given to it. I also think my bias in terms of work's focus is that in the aftermath of COINTELPRO, in the aftermath of the assaults on these organizations and the people like Dhoruba who have been removed from our histories and our commentary for so long, as a more powerful and pervasive and controlled media environment that seems to be more free and inclusive has emerged and evolved or been imposed on us. I don't understand how we could expect anyone to have reached any different conclusion. As much as I disagree with so much that people are doing and saying, I think if we step back and offer a relatively objective analysis, I think it has to include the fact that we can't expect more. Part of what I was saying about my criticism of Dr. Anderson is that he himself exists. His career, his analysis that he represents, and he's not the only one, only exists because of that same vacuum created by the counterintelligence program and its compatriots. how can generations who would have heard much more of a black capitalist argument, of a celebrity-driven culture argument, of a history that doesn't even include reference to the Panthers, much less the BLA, that doesn't explain what capitalism is, much less socialist alternatives. How could we expect anything else? So that would be it. That would be my, so I think that this, to the extent possible, this is why I think we have to continue to work with each other, whether it's, I don't care, Black Alliance for Peace, Pan-African Community Action, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, Community Movement Builders, the FTP movement. I don't, whatever it is, we have to be more involved and more clear on what it is that we want, if we're going to expect anyone. So even in our discussion offline, Dhoruba brought up what often people do, the Vietnamese struggle and how it was handed down generationally, but that was the point. It was handed down generationally. And I know this, it's jacked up, but obviously I don't mean it in any, but if you have the quote unquote benefit of constantly being invaded on a land that you already know is yours and have had historically, I think it's easier to pass down generational struggle than it is in a society where you have been a captive on someone else's stolen land and then mythologized through not only the most aggressive and hostile of physical violence, but the most pernicious psychological warfare the world has ever seen. No one has suffered more psychological warfare than the people, particularly Black people, but anyone in the United States. No one has suffered it more than people here, Black people here in particular. So, and are suffering it more now than ever. When Kanye, Ice Cube, and Dr. Anderson are dominating the analysis of most of our people, we cannot be said to be in a position to hand down radical struggle to the extent that I think Dhoruba rightfully, justifiably would expect. So that's just my humble disagreement on that. And I hope we can continue to struggle. And I look forward to when he comes back, decides that he is willing to come back and grace us with a little bit more. So anyway, all right, another quick break, and let's come back and wrap up with a few more pieces here, right here that I mix.
Put it in the comments.
Yeah, definitely do that too.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
All right, everybody, welcome back again to I Mix What I Like Live right here on Black Power Media. Again, please do click join, like, subscribe, click that bell, go to blackpowermedia.org and subscribe there, blackpowermedia.org and subscribe there. Sign up there for the Patreon too, show some love, share the work, etc. Invite some friends, family, foes as well. Appreciate you. All right. There are just a couple other stories that I did want to get to here very quickly. One of which, of course, was the news the other day that, let's see if I can see what had happened was I did an update on my system, and the updates seem to work less well with StreamYard than the previous so-called worst version. And I know some of you out there can feel me on this a little bit. But you know what happened? Oh, did I lose? Oh, I think I lost my my notes on this. Let's see if I can pull them back up real quick. So I had to use a different browser to go live today, and it's a browser that does not accommodate the sharing of sound. So that was the first issue. Let's see. How do you get to the, let's see. How do you get to show full history? That's showing the full history, but it is not. Oh, man. All right. So there was the news that there was the exoneration of the supposed killers of Malcolm X. Dang. And I can't pull it up. My bad, everybody. But one thing that I had made a note to bring up in the story that was in the New York Times was that the shotgun that they said was used to kill Malcolm was never found. And I don't know if I knew that or ever focused on that or realized that. We, Bradley being the named shooter was one thing, but that they never found the shotgun was I thought a very odd piece of that story. Anyway, my bad. I have to try to get this browser situation fixed and maybe come back to that. But fret none, because I work with a collective. I don't have to do everything. Can't be expected to do everything. So coming up today at 4:00, we have right here on Black Power Media, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And if you're hearing this later or watching this later, just go back to Black Power Media and check it. It's also going to be on iTunes and Spotify for the Riot Starter show. Kalonji Changa is going to host Paul Lee and Peter Goldman, two of the foremost historians around the lifetimes, death, and legacy of Malcolm X. So they're going to have, they will have covered all of that more fully. I had only wanted to make mention of one or two pieces, but I don't have my notes in front of me because the browser thing on which I had them is gone. And the only thing I had written there was about the shotgun. So we'll leave it to them. Kalonji, Peter Goldman, Paul Lee. That's going to be a great conversation today at 4 p.m. Eastern on Black Power Media. Okay, so the only other things that I had was, so I saw a couple of comments referring to me both directly and indirectly about Jimmy Dore. One comment was saying that I'm promoting Jimmy Dore, and that we don't need to do that. And with all due respect to our wonderful audience, I don't think that relative to his hundreds of thousands of views, I don't think I'm promoting anything. But I get it. Maybe in these spaces, I get it. We don't need. But my point again, I'm not saying Jimmy Dore. In fact, I honestly don't even watch him anymore. That's the reality at this point. I haven't watched certainly a full clip of his in I think a couple of months at this point, but it's been a minute. But that said, the point is, I'm not advocating for his analysis. He was merely an outlet for mainstream US based news. That's it. Again, a lot of people who are critical of me for referencing Jimmy Dore watch CNN or MSNBC or some other white outlet for news. It's not the outlet that is being necessarily supported. It is. Now, I thought for a while he got a lot right in his again left of Democratic Party critique. And I think a lot of what I've been seeing in the comments and on some other shows has actually misrepresented his. I don't think people actually watch him, and I get it. If you want to dismiss him because he's white, all right, fine. But that's not really an analysis, and it's not really accurate to say that, for instance, he's in the same category as Bill Maher. I know my dear sister Kim Brown has suggested that. I think on the one hand, yeah, I mean, we can, okay. But on the other hand, I think there are some important differences. For instance, Jimmy Dore, unlike Bill Maher, advocated for total withdrawal of U.S. troops, universal health care, universal basic income, a creation of an alternative political party that's left of the Democrats and Republicans and libertarians. What were some of the other ones? I mean, just some of those basics. Like he's critical of Nancy Pelosi and AOC far more than Bill Maher apparently was, because I only watched Bill Maher in terms of clips. I haven't watched him in years either. So I mean, again, it's not a defense of Jimmy Dore. It's just saying that was the outlet I was watching instead of MSNBC or CNN. And then he had become for a time to replace when I had even started watching Crystal Ball and her colleague, because he was left of them. So I was trying to get the most left regular coverage of mainstream U.S. news. And I don't know if there are other better ones. Let me know. Because I don't want to watch CNN and MSNBC, and I don't even like, Al Jazeera is not even getting it sometimes either. So stuff like that, RT maybe or something like. I don't like. I mean, I don't promote these outlets as radicals. I just when I want some news, I'm trying to get something that's. Anyway, so that was really it. We do have to, I think, just in general, to get better with some nuance. That's all. And then I've also been incredibly critical of Jimmy Dore and his colleagues for talking about particularly for talking about Julian Assange and never talking about Mumia or other political prisoners. Like I don't, so like even when they have their newly found black friends, they don't talk about this stuff. So like that's one of the reasons why I don't watch anymore. Anyway. So that was it. And then the last thing and the only other thing I had for this morning, just to clarify a point or two on Rittenhouse, because as we played the video from Jimmy Dore the other day, I agree with Jimmy and his friends that mainstream media got the story wrong. Their narrative is wrong. But I think the replacement narrative from Jimmy and his friends, and then the virtue signaling rage from the liberal left, or whatever they're called today, is equally criticizable, if not fully condemnable. Did I say that? Is that even a word? I don't know. Anyway. So for instance, like again, of Rittenhouse was rewarded for being white, being male, for showing up in a Black Lives Matter protest to defend property. And then I ultimately think he was rewarded for shooting white people who were seen as nominally being in defense of or in solidarity with black people. So yeah, the mainstream narrative had many mistakes. The how it was reported, the story, all of that. It did have a very liberal bent to it. A very whether it's anti-gun or the lunatic white man is the racist. I get it. That is all to be criticized. But again, the bottom line for me was he showed up there not because he was in solidarity with black people. He didn't show up there to be in solidarity with Blake, young Blake. Is it Justin? Oh man, my bad, man. Somebody help me out real quick. Let me peek into the chat real quick. Is it Justin Blake? Jeff Blake, I know, was the former black quarterback. My apologies. But anyway, but Rittenhouse wasn't Jacob Blake. Thank you, Leah and Ursula. Thank you. Jacob, he wasn't there to defend Jacob Blake. He wasn't there to support Black Lives Matter to the extent that, whatever. But he was there to do his white boy thing. I get it. And of course he got off. And of course he was going to be, because again, he shot. Now, again, look, man, I got all kinds of thoughts about like why, how are any of us engaging these moments? How organized are we when we enter these spaces? I do think it's wildly interesting that all the gun brandishing, because the two people that accosted Rittenhouse also had guns. Like, it's like all these white boys with guns running around black protests. So but and of course they're going, the vigilante part that they want to defend in this society is, of course, I think, particularly not even shooting black people, which is of course number one, but almost parallel to that, white people do not like white people who they think are in solidarity with black people. And I have been in some crazy, just anecdotally, been in some crazy, mostly in the military, where these arguments would occur where this would just be at the surface. It's like right next to the black body we want to string up. We want them white ones that were rocking with you. Like that. So when he shot white people, some might have been, even myself for a moment, might have been prone to think, oh, you broke the cardinal rule. You killed white people. You're in trouble now. But no. You killed white people who were seen as being in solidarity with black people. So all the stuff about the old boy coming out of a mental hospital, having I think been accused of molesting children, some crazy sexual violence in his past, like all of that is irrelevant, I think, to the judge, to the jury, to the broader public that supports Rittenhouse. They don't care about all of that. They don't care about the self-defense. They don't care about him running from being thrown things at him, people shooting. Like they don't care about any of those other official legal points that the defense brought to get Rittenhouse out. They don't care about that. What they care about is that he shot up white folks defending black people. So, all right, that's it for me. Definitely, as others like to say on their shows, you've heard from me, so let us hear from you, and put it in the chat, all that. I do go through the chats and the comments and try to find things. Let's see. You know how I feel about it, honestly? I feel I like the fact that I am part of a collective that isn't uniform, unanimity without uniformity. I did not see the entire TI interview, but we're not always going to get the analysis of the argument that we want to get. Of course, Kalonji has every right to interview who he likes, and people should offer their criticism if they have it. But I don't have a problem with him having been on this platform. I disagreed with some of the BAP crew over Killer Mike a couple months ago. And if Killer Mike wants to or would have ever come on here, I would have welcomed that. And if he had ever been, though I never believed him, sincere in wanting to engage BAP, I would have encouraged that as well. But I did encourage it and would still encourage it. So, but no, I don't. Yeah. So yeah, that's it on that. Oh, what's this? You interviewed Jimmy Dore? He said, Doobie Boogaloo, that's Doobie Boogaloo boys have worked with black militias and they're anti-KK cops. The boog guy on Jimmy's show said he supported reparations when I interviewed him. Yeah. I saw the dude that he interviewed, and he gave, if the dude was being honest and he came across that way, the Boogaloo boys are misrepresented. They're not the same as the Proud Boys. He was, I think, did he say he was himself gay? I know he supported LGBTQ. He supported black folks. He was anti-cop, all that kind of stuff. So yeah. And Jimmy wasn't interviewing him, because that's when I was still watching. He wasn't interviewing him for some, some conservative, Is it constantly being discussed? Why alt-light like Jimmy is constantly being, I think I've explained that, and I don't think he's constantly being discussed. We just did almost 2 hours on everything but that, and he was, so breakthrough news for sure. Yeah, he has gotten worse. He's gotten worse. And yeah, breakthrough news is a good source. I've referenced Eugene this morning. I've had the pleasure of being on that platform, vice versa. Absolutely. No, I don't. I hold some grudges and hold on to stuff. That's facts. That is facts. Yeah, you're right. RT is too anti-black for me. I was just trying to think of they're really conservative, actually. They're more conservative than I would have even thought. Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Shout out to Obioma and the AAPRP. I do. I just, yeah. Oh, wait. If Ear Doctor is here, are you back, brother? Are you back? Because if you are, can you play this for me? I am Petty Pendergrass. That's funny. Because I would love it if we could, because Ghostface, I've been saying this about Ghostface for years. I love Ghostface, right? I'm gonna come back to the comments. I'm not in a particular hurry today. So if y'all want to hang around for a minute, we can do this. But here's the link, brother Ear Doctor. I'm not gonna play much of it because he deals with this, what I need for, again, Drink Champs. Shout out to Drink Champs. Talk about alternative sources. I'm a big Drink Champs fan. Nori and DJ EFN. But this right here,
the only thing that I could speak very passionately about.
Oh wait, what is this? Is this a commercial? Okay, my bad. Yeah, run that. Go ahead and run that, because he says this right at the top. You see how anyway.
What's the difference between him and Action Bronson?
Oh wait,
Bronson.
Okay.
I knew this was coming. Yeah.
Okay.
Nah, see, what you mean the difference?
Like the difference because
like the similarities you mean?
Obviously
I forgot the
Bronson,
context.
Bronson had the voice.
Okay.
Right? As far as the style, because I went to Africa and I just created a style like that.
That's a crazy story.
Yeah, all right, cool. So I created a style on some like, let me create. Well, this was no music because I was there in the village. So I'm like, no music there, whatever the case may be. So I'm like, I'm gonna just create something where it's like, just come with a bunch of words that just sound good together. Really didn't really mean shit. It's funny because motherfuckers try to decipher this shit. It's like, nigga, I don't even know what the fuck is going on here.
That was it. So first of all, I forgot what the context was. Because I couldn't find at the time. I don't think the whole video had been released. I couldn't find the segment on the actual Drink Champs video. I don't actually like to. I kind of don't like the hustle on YouTube of taking clips of other people's shows and putting it on your channel and then offering it as brand new content when you have nothing new to offer as an analysis or whatever, just airing it, whatever. But for years, that was it. For years, I've been arguing. I love Ghostface, but I think he don't know. I don't know what he's saying. Couple good stories, obviously, Maxine, others, but in general, like, he's just saying stuff that sounds good together but doesn't mean anything. And I appreciate that he admitted that in the context of him explaining. Go ahead here, Doctor. Go ahead, man. Come on, man.
Both hands crusty, chilling with my man Dusty, low down, blow off the burner kind of dusty. Come on, man.
I'm saying, but he said it himself. I'm with you, but I'm saying he said it himself.
Nah, you right. I mean, he plays with the words. That's what wordplay and being a lyricist is all about too. So absolutely,
I'm saying that I love Ghosts. I love Ghosts. I just thought that was funny, but I appreciate you. I mean, that was, and then it was in the context. I don't know if you followed this also, but the context of the whole thing with Action Bronson, who I've never listened to, but who apparently sounds a lot like Ghost. And then they apparently had Ghost was like, you trying to sound like me? Dude was like, no, it's just my voice. And then Ghost said, no, it's just his voice, and they're cool now or whatever, apparently, whatever. So it's like, but I just thought that was funny.
That's like your boy with Timberland, Mr. Magoo, who had the same voice as Q-Tip. They had the same voice. You know what I'm saying? It happens. Some people say I sound like Jay-Z when I rhyme. You know what I'm saying? It happens. But I'm saying he right. Just like old boy when with Biggie Smalls and Shine. Shine had the same voice. So it
Shine, that's right. Yeah. That happens. It happens. Right on. I know. That was it. I just thought that was funny. Yeah, go ahead.
With the wordplay and the stories, Ghostface can take you to the story mode he got is ridiculous. It's on that Slick Rick, which he says he gets his style from a storytelling, Slick Rick style. So Ghostface is a beast, but you ain't lying. He be putting some words together. Him and Raekwon. I mean, really. But that's what it is. That's that slang that you could go back and be like, that's that Shaolin slang. Yo, big up to JT Coin Rings. He was hitting Sundays yesterday and was bigging it up, dropping $1.99 like every other song. So big up to JT Coin Rings. For real.
That's what's up. Big up to JT Coin Rings and do as he says. Hit that like button and share the content. Word. You know what I mean?
But I had to dip in here real quick because I see you.
No, you're always welcome.
And
that was all I had to say. I love Ghost, and I just was so happy because for years, going back to shout out to the Decipher block at WPFW, and when we worked with DJ Two Tone Jones, and we used to talk. He and I used to laugh about this all the time. Like we love Ghost, don't always know what he's talking about, and it don't matter. I just So when I heard that clip, I was like, what? Yeah. I got to try to play.
I mean, you think of some of the most brilliant poets of our times, and a lot of the stuff don't make no sense. But it's like the brilliancy of how they put this together and the imagery. So he's another poet. So I got
right on. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's right. And Ear Doctor, much respect. Thank you very much.
I made it to the I Mix What I Like show. Yeah.
Always welcome. Always welcome. That's right. I appreciate you, man.
Y'all have a good one. Big up to all the mixers. I'll see y'all tomorrow morning. Peace.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Big shout out to Ear Doctor, man. That was dope. What else did I miss here? A couple other things. So Garvey was wrong. Was this about the black capitalism? I'm trying to look at the time. So this would have been around the black capitalism piece. It's funny you mentioned that because in that interview, Dr. Anderson does say something akin to Garvey, that famous line from Garvey that we need our own Rockefellers and all this. He says something like that too. Like he said something like we need our own Bezos or something like that. So on that end, wrong is so strong. I think that there were elements of everybody's program with which I disagree. That's all. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, I'm not even, we don't even mention, no, we're all soda here. Solidarity of Dispersed Africans. So some of these other spaces won't work. Let's see. Yeah, you can't neglect state and local policy either. Federal redistribution is just welfare. When giving back you something, if they give it to you, they can take it back. Not if you have political power, which is again my point. In which case this would equate to everything if I'm understanding the context of this comment. I mean, what is going to occur in this country without federal government supporting it? So I'm not, and again, I don't even agree with this description of welfare. What the federal government would be redistributing is wealth we have all helped to create. This is, again, the importance that I think we need to be placing, to the extent we're not doing something far more revolutionary, on gross domestic product. the GDP, the value of all of the money, or the value of all the goods and services in any given year, or really the measurement of the wealth that goes to the people that own all the goods and services in a society. We are creating the wealth just by paying bills, just by going to a movie or downloading a this or buying a that, or getting a new app, getting a new phone, buying coffee, buying groceries, putting gas in the car, going to work. All of us are creating the wealth. It is just federally redistributed to the handful. So what comes back to us is not welfare. It's an insufficient portion of what we've helped create. But we have businesses in our communities exploiting us now. You think Arabs and Asians should stay? No, again, I hope I'm not missing the context, but I'm not saying we should prefer non-Black people being in a community, running businesses in Black communities and making what little money they make. I'm not saying I don't want Black businesses. I'm saying that's not a solution to the collective problem of the Black community. The Asians and Arabs who own stores in Black communities are not themselves solving the economic or material problems in their own communities. They're probably barely solving the economic problems in their own families, much less entire communities. So simply by having a Black person own the corner store or the laundry or the pharmacy or whatever, the liquor store, doesn't help unless the wealth from those businesses is redistributed back to the community, in which case the ownership or the ethnicity, race, etc. of the ownership is irrelevant. That's the society I want to get to. I don't want to have to count on, even Dr. Anderson talks about the fact that we don't have a code of conduct in our community, meaning that Black people can't be trusted to help other Black people when they make it. I don't want to have to trust a successful business person to turn back and help the rest of us. I want policy, political power, so that it doesn't matter. Again, I keep going back to the Frank White line. If a nickel is made in the park, if a nickel bag is sold in the park, I want a cut. We should all think of it just in that same way. I don't care who owns what where. If I'm a member of society and wealth is being generated by that exchange, I want a cut. Why? Because I help produce in this society. I'm a member of the society. The schooling, the investment in medicine, in research, in medical care for the people who become owners, the training for the people who become owners, the protected society in which they can conduct their business, all comes from me and us. So why are they the only ones who get to benefit from it? Again, part of the hustle that sounds Black and radical is to come out and be like, we should have this and we should be doing that, but it doesn't solve anything. First of all, we don't have the political organization or power to make that happen, much less to have the distribution occur that we would want after the fact. I don't care. I really couldn't care less about one more Black business. We got to get. That's not the solution. That's not the answer. Anyway, are there any other comments or criticisms? And I'll get to the newer ones. If I missed something, please repost it if you would like me to address it now. At least got a few more minutes. Yeah, I don't think it's right to dismiss China as capitalist either. Obviously, they're no utopia, but I think that's a misreading of what's going on there. Socialists also have to deal with counter-revolutionaries and reactionaries. I mean, I get it. Let's see. China is state capitalism, but Lenin wrote it was a stage prior to the ascent of the first stages of socialism. However, Western socialism is really a remedy for Western capitalism wherever it exists. I agree with that. Black unity is a must. Yeah, I think you talk about Kanye and Ice Cube. Yeah. Thank you for the compliment. Appreciate that. Appreciate you coming through. I've tried. He's not interested. I've invited Killer Mike. You know, he's not interested. So, I mean, sometimes I think it's funny. People say, like, you know, I get messages, not that this is your, you know, saying you should have so-and-so on or interview so-and-so, as if anybody wants to, everybody I reach out to will come on. I think it's, but remember what Killer Mike said. Well, how could you remember? You weren't on the phone call, and he wouldn't come on to say it live. But his larger point was he's paid. His public speaking is either paid or to promote his Greenwood Bank initiative. So you know. Yeah, Dhoruba's right on that. I mean, you know. Yeah, there were no lies. But I do disagree again with Dhoruba's point. I don't think we can condemn this generation without appreciating the conditions they're in. I don't see how they could be like, how would a, you know, one of the points I made to Dhoruba on the phone was, or tried to, was that, you know, and again, I mean, it is wildly uncomfortable for me to have any point of disagreement with that man. So I just want to be clear on that. But when he was talking about what he did in his lifetime, which is beyond remarkable, the only thing I was trying to say was that he was also influenced by a domestic and international movement that doesn't exist today. So I'm trying to think, like, you know, at 17, 18, 19, what teenager today, what young person today would have such inspiration, or what would they be inspired to be doing right now? How could they be inspired to do what Dhoruba did? What organization would be encouraging that? What movement would be encouraging that, when so much is coming at them, telling them something else? That's my point. That's where I think we agree. And again, I have to start with the students that end up in my classrooms. That you know, that's my most direct engagement on a regular basis with Black youth, from within from around the diaspora, almost all from working class or quote unquote worse backgrounds economically. I don't know where they would be inspired to something more revolutionary. Now, the flip side is, now I haven't checked lately, but one of the reasons why my score, for instance, or rate my professor, was so high, or why my student evaluations always come back glowingly, even when administrators have tried to find reason to challenge my tenure, and they often would start with student evaluations, it's like, it didn't work. Because one of the reasons why students like me so much, one of the reasons why an administrator had to email a student requesting my participation in a convocation and say, this is some years ago, I have not, you know, no more Dr. Ball, please invite somebody else. He's done too much. He's been invited too much. One of the reasons why I got, you know, like a couple times, like, you know, the sophomore class or the junior class would, you know, I'd be like professor of the year, faculty of the year, whatever. The reason that happens, the number one reason that happens, I think there are several, but the number one reason by far is that I am open about my politics and my bias. I challenge them with my what are considered radical beliefs. I welcome their disagreement. They never have to agree to get an A. Agreement does not guarantee an A, first of all. But my point is, really what I'm getting at is that they want it. My class this semester, my intro to Black Studies class this semester, among as much as any other class I've ever had, they from day one were like, what? That's the perspective we're getting this semester? George Jackson, Assata Shakur, who are these people? What did they do? That's what they were like, word. They have been among the best students I've ever had, the most exciting semester I've ever had. And that's in some ways, even though I'm saying they're the best, like it's kind of routine. Like students want the radical challenge. They know, just like everybody, we're oppressed. This is not right. This is jacked up. Now they get the messaging of the church, mainstream media, conservative politics, reactionary pundits, mythology and journalists. They get all of that stuff that drags them back, that holds them back. They look up and the most overt thing they get is a Black Lives Matter movement, which Dhoruba himself said is not going to work. So where are they going to be encouraged to something else? I know in segments of the AAPRP and elsewhere, the discussions are like, how can we, people, it doesn't matter which, all organizations are constantly struggling with how do we become or remain relevant to young people? How do we intervene in the educations that they're getting? And we're all struggling with that. Anyway, I don't know. I just struggle with that. I just struggle with that. Do the knowledge exam. I'd rather accept this revolutionary burnout than some of these grifting, failing Black business owners saying they have revolutionary brand not selling. Vietnamese capitalism. I mean, they also have a country. They have a nation. They have boundaries and borders that Black people here don't have. That we could argue even Africans on the continent don't have, given the interventions of AFRICOM and Capital and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Yeah, I feel for him too. And I've heard him in previous lectures and interviews. He's been very critical of his former colleagues for not maintaining certain politics. I've actually seen how the development of certain events will marginalize Dhoruba and people who maintain those kinds of politics. So I definitely feel for him. And I like I said, he is. I think I've said he is my favorite, philosopher, analyst, whatever. Thank you. Appreciate you. Careful, Audra. We in trouble around here. Although I like I said, I can't say I like it anymore. I haven't seen it in a minute. Yeah, we do have to have a little bit more of a nuance. He's not this. Yeah, like John Oliver I actually haven't watched John Oliver much, but has he? I mean, where are his left positions? Like, what is he advocating beyond the left of the Democratic Party? But it's cool. We don't have to. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I agree. Breakthrough does a lot of great work. Yeah, I already answered the question about T.I. Yeah, Richard Wolff is better for sure. I watch him a lot as well. I agree. He's been on Jimmy Dore's show before. Again, a point I would make, like has Bill Maher had Richard Wolff on? I don't know. Has John Oliver had Richard Wolff on? Oh, they might have. I mean, he gets as close as they get, but oh, word, Dhoruba, you out here? The white allies of the civil rights movement were eulogized. Viola, Luiso were deified, not classified as criminals, as is in the Rittenhouse case. Huh. Oh no, I don't. I just don't. No, I'm not off. I don't teach on Mondays generally. I just happen to have a little more time today. Although I think, in fact, I have a meeting in a few minutes. I'm just looking at my calendar, so I'm gonna have to wrap up here in a few minutes. But no, that's it. And I appreciate you for not complaining. You know what? I'm not exactly sure of the status of the bank. The last I checked, it's been a couple months, and at the time I had checked, they had gotten $43 million in deposits, $3 million from the actor Jesse Williams, and $40 million from J.P. Morgan. And as I said directly to Killer Mike himself on the phone, that by definition is not Black independent economics that will lead the collective anywhere. J.P. Morgan, being your number one investor, cannot. Actually, it could have been anybody, but the fact that it's J.P. Morgan, it can't possibly be. Again, a relationship brokered by Andy Young, Killer Mike's board advisor. So I mean, it's just. We're not going to see eye to eye on that. Yeah, it did. I haven't watched Democracy Now! In a minute. Yeah. No, okay, I get you on this. Rosenbaum was not an ally. The real allies of protesters were trying to get his ass out of there before he got the real protester kills. He did. Thank you for making that point, brother. I appreciate it, and I'm not disagreeing with that. And that's why I kept using the words nominally and ostensibly when I said, and I still believe, that the reason Rittenhouse got off was because he was seen as killing white allies, white nominal allies, ostensibly there to help Black protesters. I'm not saying he was a real ally. I don't know. I don't disagree. I don't know, but from what I saw in the video, what you're saying here looked right, that he was instigating. He was clearly disturbed, agitated, the extent that I don't know about his medical or legal background, but just in the video clips, from back when I might have been in those spaces. And it's been, honestly, I don't, for a number of reasons, don't venture out there too much anymore, but I would, if I had seen that, I'd have been out immediately, and anybody I was with would have been out immediately, unless we were pre-organized to do something else in response. But in a general reaction like that, I'd be like, let's bounce, we're out, because it was clear there was going to be a problem there. And again, I don't find it to be coincidental that the gun violence at a Black Lives Matter protest involves white folks. Like, it's like but again, yeah. I get that the real allies were trying to get him out of there. But my point is, from the people on the jury, from the judge, and that mass of white supporters in the United States and beyond for Rittenhouse, they're saying he was there to protect property and he shot white defenders of Black folks. Go with God, as they would say, Godspeed and all that kind of stuff. I get that too. I don't expect white outlets to talk about political prisoners, but it could be argued that political prisoners would benefit from them doing it. And that's the only reason why I raised that and have at times asked white outlets to cover, because when there are supporters of these prisoners trying to make some sort of push, the more noise, the better. I admit a part of my pettiness is also that I like to see people demonstrate their fraudulence. Yeah, right on. Ear Doctor came through. That's why I like working in collectives. You know what I'm saying? I didn't even reach out. I just was like, I got a problem. And he showed up. That's what's up. Yeah, he killed it last night. So thanks again, JT Coins, for supporting. Thank you, Howdy Doody, for your support as well. We appreciate that. Oh, wow. We have a loose definition of lyricist. Uh-oh. I hope you got a follow-up to that. Oh, really? No, did they really say they were going to change their name? Again, I never saw any Fred Hampton politics in their work, but I was not the biggest, consumer of their work. But when I saw Brother on Jimmy Dore, I was just like, I get it. It's like, I don't know. It's a weird contradiction. I want white faces to be left white, unless the black intervention is going to be an actual black intervention. So if, I used to like Seinfeld because there were no black people on there. I don't want to see fake relationships where the black intervention was not going to be a black intervention. I like, what are my other shows that, anyway, I don't need to see black people or representation in, whites, let this, but if you're going to have black guests and regular black co-hosts for segments and discussion, I would like that black person to offer some sort of black radical intervention and not just sort of parrot. So if he had brought, some Hampton in there, that'd have been great. And of course, Jimmy would never interview Fred Hampton Jr. No, I didn't see this. And I don't think I've watched her show. No disrespect. I just haven't watched. I saw her when she was, a hot regular guest on the white outlets. So like, so who I watch, Katie Halper and Matt Taibbi. I like their work. I like their show. I think they're funny. They're a good team. They do good work. Like Katie on her show had a brother who was like a routine, a regular guest co-host or whatever. And I didn't mind that. I forgot his name, but because he wasn't coming in like I'm Fred Hampton and he I don't know, maybe I'm contradicting myself. He didn't claim to be the black radical intervention. And so when he did his own style of that, it didn't bother me. I didn't watch it that much, but anyway, I don't know. But I like it when her and Matt Taibbi do their show, particularly Monday mornings, like the one that they're doing probably right now, which I'll watch later. And I used to see Brianna come up on their show, on The Rising, on Jimmy Dore and others. And I thought she was cool, but I didn't think, she was a Sanders type. So I was like, that's, all right, I'm good on that. So I haven't really watched her show. She said it was white people's business. Again, I don't know the full context of her comments. I get it. My slight disagreement might be, or my disagreement might come from the fact that it's white people's business, but in the context, at least initially, of black struggle. the Jacob Blake issue, black people suffering police violence in general, racism, white supremacy, like that was the context of that white people's business. And then it becomes our business if they are going to give legal cover. And again, a point that has been made to me by some dearest of loved ones that the thing with Rittenhouse starts with him having an illegally possessed weapon, which should have legally ended the whole thing. And in fact, there's a legal argument that has been made to me by a brilliant lawyer and legal scholar and practitioner very close to me, who said that there is a legal argument to be made that every single thing that happens after the fact of his illegal possession of the gun is his fault. So that legally the judge and the jury were wildly out of pocket. Because I said, damn, that makes me uncomfortable. See, that would not be the reason I would want him to have gotten off, oddly enough, because that makes me uncomfortable. Because my reaction was, so if I'm outside my house, or if I go outside and I have an illegal weapon, blade, gun, whatever, and I am attacked by whoever, I think I use Klansmen as an example, but whoever, and I use that weapon to defend myself legally, and this love, was like, yeah, I mean, that legally speaking, if you kill them, even if they attack you with weapons, it's your fault for having an illegal, like you cannot get off as with self-defense for having used an illegal weapon. I was like, I'm not good with that. I'm still not good with that. But I think that it is our business, if they're going to give legal cover to people engaged in vigilante violence, or who show up with weapons to black protests who are not there to support black protest. So I do think it becomes our business at that point. All right, good people. I got to jump off because I do have a meeting, unfortunately, I have to get to. Not unfortunately, I mean, it's a good meeting to get to, actually. And it's for BPM. But I do enjoy these discussions. And on days when I have the time, I really do enjoy the prolonged and extended discussion. And I really appreciate that you all would want to stick around and have it. But again, and shout out to our move collectively to other outlets. If you're hearing this on those outlets as a podcast, thank you. Please go to blackpowermedia.org and drop something on the Patreon, or go to the YouTube channel and subscribe, join, and all that good stuff. Obviously, subscribe to the podcast as well. If we didn't get to everything, obviously, which we couldn't have, and you got some more to say, we do definitely check them. So like my man Pierre often
put it in the comments.
And we'll get to it. So again, a big thanks to Toni Blackman for coming on the first part of the show. Thanks to all of you for checking this out and engaging in the conversation and the debate and the discussion. I look forward to much more. I am going to look for Dhoruba in the whirlwind. Peace, because I know you're willing to fight for it. See you next time.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.